finally feels like fall. To a regular meeting 1351 of the Wachusett Regional School District School Committee. We're coming to you tonight via Google Meets as per the orders of Governor Charlie Baker. We are also streaming live tonight on YouTube, but we are not streaming live on Holden Cable TV this evening as the Holden Select Board meeting is happening simultaneously, and they are using our airwaves there. But I think many of our constituents have really enjoyed viewing us on YouTube. It's always an interesting movie that unfolds here tonight. We're going to start tonight with public hearing. I do have a number of comments to read, many of which are from students, and I take those with the utmost seriousness. The first tonight comes from resident Julie Reno. She says, twice in my daughter's time in this district from K through 8, we have either met with the team or about bullying or submitted a formal bullying complaint. The end result of the meeting was that the vice principal at the time saying that it is good that she'll be at a new school next year. We had just moved to the Mayo region. This should never have been the resolution. These kids reunited in middle school. In 5th grade, my daughter was called a slut several times by a 5th grade boy. Nothing happened with this. In 6th grade, on the 3rd day of school, the same boy said the same thing. The teacher addressed it and it never happened again. However, several days on the bus, she heard the same boy call a classmate the N-word. She knew this was bad and stood up for the classmate, and it continued. Then in 8th grade last year, she was bullied by a troubled kid so badly that she became suicidal and was hospitalized. I made a report and requested an investigation, and again, nothing came of it. Nothing. And now my daughter is thankfully out of the district. And again, the comment made to me by one of the administrators was, well, it's a good thing for her to be in a different school next year. Why is this the go-to response of the district? While I'm thrilled my daughter is out of WRSD, I still have a child in 2nd grade. Perhaps it could be a good time to revisit celebrations in the classroom by not having birthday parties and recognizing religious holidays. Instead of making kids feel welcome, it is backfiring and creating a very limited exposure to anything outside of what each student's family celebrates. Why not do the opposite? Poll families at the beginning of each school year and ask what they'd like to share about their family celebration. And maybe you can have families volunteer that'd be willing to come in and share what their culture and religions do to celebrate a birth, death, or holiday. It's a great opportunity to include everybody and to open the conversation for kids who maybe feel like they don't have anything common with their opposite sex, different race, different religion peers. This would build learning opportunities. The time is now to review how education is happening. Clearly, our district is failing at many levels. Let's try something different. Let's be proactive instead of reactive. Also tonight, we hear from Tammy Todd of 3 Orchard Hill Drive in Rutland, Massachusetts. After watching the last 4 meetings, I feel compelled to write this letter to you. As a lifelong resident of the district, a former school committee member, I am saddened to see the behavior of the school committee and how you treat one another. Member LaVoy, after consulting with Chair Weeks and not getting a satisfactory response, filed a grievance which he perceived to be a violation of OML. This was not an attack against anyone's character, but a perception of an act which he perceived to be a violation of OML. Proper protocol was followed and determinations made by the district's attorney. The school committee then had a vote whether they agreed with the determination of the attorney or if they wanted to pursue the complaint any further. The person who filed the grievance spoke, then Member LaVoy explained why he filed. What happened next was inexcusable. The motion on the table was to discuss whether to take action further. Member Haynes had a verbal attack. This is a direct violation of the bullying policy which you're obliged to follow. Member Haynes was not speaking on the motion. I feel that Member Haynes owed Member LaVoy, as well as the chair, a public apology. Also, Chair, please be fair in giving school committee members the same amount of time. If it's 2 minutes limited to time to speak, that's a rule for everyone, not just some. Sometimes you cut off some members, yet you allow others to ramble on. Please keep in mind that any resident can place a grievance with the Attorney General for a violation of OML. Also, any resident in WRSD can file a complaint with Ethics Committee if they feel like there's been an ethics violation. This committee keeps preaching to the public, imploring us to have patience and to show kindness. I think you should look within your own group and practice what you're asking of your constituents. Thank you for your time. We're now going to hear from a number of students tonight. Just open. This is actually a condensed version of a longer email written by the student. I do want to let the committee know that this is a lengthy letter, but the student took an exceptional amount of time to put this together, and I had let her know that I would read her response in full. Her name is Isabella LeBlanc, and she attends the high school. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to share my thoughts regarding the urgent need to retire the current image of the Wachusett Regional High School mascot and the need to increase education on differences through an actively anti-racist curriculum. My name is Isabella LeBlanc, and I live in Holden. I've attended schools in the WRSD since kindergarten. I began my educational career at the Mayo Elementary School, went to Mountain View, and I'm a current junior at Wachusett. I've had a very positive experience in each of my schools, unlike my peers of various minority groups. I have never been silenced or faced prejudice by teachers or peers. The absence of understanding racial and cultural divides is an immense problem. Education is paramount to truly expose the systematic hatred within our nation and in our community. Our current mascot does not represent the current student body or the ideas we share with the changing world around us. The current image of the mountaineer is of a man who wears the clothing of a farmer with a rifle in his hand. The weapon is extended into position as if ready to be fired, and the man is at a defensive stance. At Wachusett, visitors are welcome as the students learn about the myriad of subjects and cultures. It seems ironic that Wachusett has the word welcome written in several languages on the wall near the auditorium entrance, yet by the entrance to the driveway with the image of a threatening man with a weapon, as if ready to intimidate any incoming visitors. There are countless talented students who can participate and collaborate to design a new improved image for the mascot. To acknowledge a counter-argument, the Second Amendment rights in the United States Constitution describes the individual right to bear arms, which is irrelevant to the alteration of the Wachusett mascot. By removing the man's weapon, the school is no way changing its support in alignment with the Constitution and American ideals. Rather, realigning the mascot to the morale of the school and its students is crucial at this time. A symbol should unify a body of people. A symbol unites one group and divides another group. A symbol can divide another group from outsiders. For example, the United States flag unites citizens from the 50 states, yet does not include citizens from other nations. The Wachusett mascot should unite all of its students, teachers, staff, and residents within the 5 towns. Through the past months, we learned that school is more than just what occurs between walls of a building. It transfers to homes and is found within students as they continue to enrich themselves from a distance. Change is never an easy task, yet tradition or heritage is never a strong enough excuse to remain in the habits or practices of our ancestors. Wachusett's mountaineer mascot first appeared in 1955, the same year Rosa Parks was arrested for refusing to change seats on the bus due to the color of her skin. The mountaineer appeared before the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which ended segregation, and it was printed before the famous I Have a Dream speech was delivered. The mountaineer, imposed in 1955, was not created or voted on by students at that time. The current mascot image only represents one type of person. Injustices happen far too often in our country, and the recent attention has been called to these issues. Changing the mascot will not end racism and bigotry in the country, but even a small adjustment contributes to a greater change for the better. Section 2 of Article 26 in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights states, education shall be directed to the full development of the human personality and to strengthening the respect for human rights and fundamental freedoms. It shall promote understanding, tolerance, and friendship among all nations, racial or religious groups, and shall further the activities of the United Nations for the maintenance of peace. Teachers and students at Wachusett strive to develop understanding and compassion for all individuals. If just one student feels uncomfortable or excluded from the Wachusett community, that one student is too many. If we do nothing and do not make conscious change, we support those who are opposed to inclusion and acceptance in the world it is essential that immediate and productive action is taken to address racism. We must ponder the following questions. Does the current image represent the diversity of Wachusett? And does the image represent cultural diversity in which our school wishes to embrace and celebrate? Will Wachusett address xenophobia, anti-Semitism, homophobia, sexism, and racism? To create change, we must call upon experts to share understanding within our community. How will we uphold professional suggestions for reform and have ongoing recognition of injustice in our school community? Is white privilege recognized by the Wachusett community, and are the discriminatory events that unfold every day understood? Just because something always was or always has been does not make it right. An understanding of an abstract concept like anti-racism, tolerance, and appreciation of diversity without visible change is ultimately meaningless. When the mountaineer is rightfully changed, our work for the fight for equality is not done. The paradox of administrators speaking about the core values of Wachusett, such as acceptance, kindness, and tolerance from a podium, with the image of a man holding a weapon must be addressed. We cannot believe that all students will internalize rhetoric when it is not backed with action. The majority of the American public schools, including ours, have fostered racist thought and have inadvertently raised racist young adults. These students unintentionally share racist messages and do not recognize the malice behind their words. For example, one Wachusett student said, "All I have to say about our mascot is that there's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing to fight for at Wachusett." The student does not understand the hate-filled dialogue that occurs every day at the Wachusett Regional High School and the unequal challenges of students in minority backgrounds face every time they attempt to be heard, enter a classroom discussion, or in social discourse. Education is paramount. It is the only way to break the cycle of learning from one side. From an early age, students must be taught how to question events and view situations from a variety of perspectives. The current educational system and our mascot assist white male students and alumni. Asking beneficiaries to speak for the oppressed will rarely work. We cannot expect the majority to stand up for the minority. Surveys are excellent tools to collect data. However, it is only logical that our students in the racial majority will have indifferent to change. We're currently in a global pandemic. The nation is divided, and every endeavor is placed politically either to the left or right. Continuous education and the mascot change must occur simultaneously. Through researching psychological and sociological patterns, studies demonstrate that teenagers are psychologically proven to be apathetic. Studies have shown that adults are able to have a deeper understanding of how others feel in a situation, while teenagers' responses are often self-focused. It is unrealistic to propose that students will be able to unite to fight for a minority group of students without a solid anti-racist educational background. We cannot expect the students to rise above their biological instincts and patterns of behavior. Images one views on a daily basis subconsciously register in the mind, and the subconscious brain is where decisions are made. An executive decision to retire the mascot is necessary. A consensus will not be reached by apathetic students with white privilege who are conditioned to the current image. There are individuals who state that taking down an image erases history, and we may be ignoring our past. And taking down images, we are in no form erasing or rewriting history, but instead we are recognizing it, facing it head on, and making an informed change for the present. In fact, by taking down monuments and old images, each person who sees the change will be able to truly rethink history in his or her perspective. By removing the image that promotes only one group, we're honoring the work of the groups that have gone for years unrecognized and undervalued. At Wachusett, if we truly want to remember our history, we must remember that our land our school is built upon is the land of the Nipmuc tribe. The name of the school is Wachusett, an Algonquin word meaning near the mountain or mountain place. To recognize our history, we need to acknowledge that our ancestors have actually devastated the land of Native Americans, and we rarely speak of this horrific invasion. Only 2 Native tribes are recognized by the United States Bureau of Indian Affairs in the state of Massachusetts today. Our current mascot holds a pointed gun, and although not physically damage a student, it is mentally degrading our school's mission and individual mental clarity. The mascot promotes a patriarchal society which does not represent the Wachusett district the way the Wachusett district wishes to empower young women and minority groups. Those attached to an image cannot be ruled by nostalgia. Sentimental thought is entrenching, and the reminiscent thoughts lack intention. We must make immediate change when it's necessary. We did not go to school for the last quarter of 2019-2020 to keep others safe. Although it was a challenge for each student in a unique way, administrators did not question the idea as health consequences were known. We retire the mascot image and reform curriculum if it's prioritized in the same way as mitigating COVID-19 and keeping students physically and mentally safe. We admiringly remember historical figures who did the unexpected, who make drastic changes and were not persistent in the pursuit for equal rights of humanity. Avoiding confrontation, staying apathetic, and not diligently looking for ways to assist others significantly degrades one's reputation, especially when future generations look back on the past and are dismayed by lack of action. Strong leaders take responsibility for inequities and issues that are not recognized. Individuals in leadership roles make difficult yet politically, ethically, and morally correct decisions to which not everyone agrees. In a conversation I had with Dr. McCall, he posed the question, who owns the mascot? I now request that the school committee express its dissatisfaction with the current racist, sexist, and violent mascot and call for a change. I ask current WRHS students and alumni 3 questions. How do you see Wachusett students reflected in the Mountaineer? What does the Mountaineer mean to you? And what qualities of a Mountaineer are important for students to gain their time at Wachusett? I anonymously included responses from individuals who agree and disagree with the notion of changing the mascot. I intended to ask unbiased, non-leading questions as to allow for the honest thought of each individual. In responses, I noted patterns of students and alumni, recognizing how the current Mountaineer does not encompass all members of the high school community, the need to reform the education system, and the need to address racism and other forms of discrimination. Below are some articulate and pertinent responses. To the first question, as the diversity in the Wachusett student body grows, I continue to see many students of color and minority students isolated by the image of the Mountaineer. As a member of the LGBT community, I feel that many students who are minorities due to their sexuality or race have seen their communities experience gun violence through a history until modern day. The image of the white Mountaineer with a gun simply serves to recall this violent history. Another response, Wachusett students reflect the Mountaineer through their determination and endurance. It takes a lot to climb a mountain in each of our lives. Wachusett students climb to the top of their mountains with their best ability. What does a Mountaineer mean to you? Being one in a school of thousands, integrity, honesty, being a well-rounded student, and putting one's best effort forth. Being determined and strong-willed, but also means teamwork. Mountaineers don't climb mountains alone since it can be dangerous. To be part of something greater than you. Being independent in my beliefs, having strength and will to stand up against them, but also open-minded to discuss other viewpoints. It means being educated, unbiased, and understanding. 3, what qualities of a Mountaineer are important for students to gain at their time at Wachusett? The ability to work through conflicts peacefully, accept care for others, and take responsibility of their learning. Wachusett must do its best to prepare adults for the future as citizens and voters. This should include teaching against bias and hatred. I hope that Wachusett teaches students to expand their worldviews. Coming from the small town of Rutland, Wachusett was one of the first places I got to experience different viewpoints and cultures. I think learning to respect and include all is the most important thing to learn. Respect for other people and to accept other people, to have confidence in themselves. General responses which did not directly answer one of the 3 questions, but valuable thoughts to be considered are, there are 3 thoughts. I think that the logo and mascot don't represent the values our school claims to support. The Mountaineer is a gun-toting hick. There's no other way to say it. He is shoeless, has a long beard, and unkempt hair, and a shotgun. Our school claims to be modern and accepting, but when strangers drive by to our parking lot, they're greeted by the Mountaineer. Is that the face the community wants to put forward? Being educated means not only having an extensive amount of knowledge about the world, its people and past, and its numerous cultures, but also to be aware of every individual. The student also asked that the school committee receive the full written response that she wrote, and I will be sending that to you all after tonight's meeting. Next, there are 6 student comments that were collected from our student rep. Catherine, I'm actually going to let you speak during your report, your intro, and I'll just read from the students' words themselves, if you don't mind. We're going to start with an 8th grade student at Choxet, who states, I attend Choxet Middle School. I am white, however, I notice instances of racism and it hurts me to see, and it has motivated me to make a difference. At Choxet, there are core values that are constantly talked about in school and pushed on students. I feel as though none of these values talk about equality. It may help if they did, or if equality was a core value itself, so that more awareness about anti-racism is spread. Even if equality isn't made a core value at Choxet, I still feel that anti-racism needs to be talked about more. Equality isn't a belief that doesn't just affect school, it affects the rest of your lives and should be taught at a young age. Next, from a senior at Wachusett, I think teachers should be more aware of what they're saying to students. They're teachers who are supposed to teach students how to be good people, so it's especially harmful when they say ignorant things. There's one thing that especially sticks out in my mind. I clearly remember because it's so blatantly ignorant, even though it happened a year ago. Last year, there's a student in one of my classes who was Hispanic. The teacher was especially problematic. She even slut-shamed celebrities in front of the class. So honestly, I'm not surprised she would get extremely irritated and be rude to students. Once in class, she gave a really confusing instruction, so we asked her to repeat it. When the student asked her to repeat instructions that were still unclear, she said something along the lines of, how many times do I have to say it for you to understand? Do you need me to say it in Spanish for you? It was shocking and the whole class was silent. The student was obviously uncomfortable. I'm not sure if it was her intention to be racist, but as I said, teachers should hold themselves to a greater level of responsibility. Their position is teaching the future of America. I literally couldn't believe a teacher would say that to a student and humiliate them in front of the whole class. My point is, after that experience, teachers need to understand the consequences of things they say. I've faced so many microaggressions and witnessed other POC experience them as well. If necessary, teachers should be educated on what a microaggression is, because it's hard to understand if you never experienced it yourself. Not only teachers, but students. Once in my homeroom, I was asking another student in my class questions about the different Chinese empires. Another girl overheard and said, shouldn't you know that? You're Chinese. Which again, maybe didn't seem offensive, but microaggressions are not obviously racist. Not all Asians are Chinese, and just because I have a heritage from another country doesn't mean I know the history of that country. I was born in America and gone to that country twice in my life. But just because I don't look white, the student assumed I should know everything about my other country. From another senior at Wachusett. Racism and racist language is far too common at Wachusett. As a white student, I've been told to put some pants on the N-word by a group of laughing boys when I quietly walked to the school sidewalk wearing shorts. I've heard my classmates scream the N-word in the cafeteria and receive no discipline despite the multiple adults within earshot. One of my friends immigrated to America when she was in elementary school. Within her first week at Wachusett, she heard the boy next to her joking that she'd line up with the immigrants, legal or illegal, and shoot them in the head. Imagine a person you just met suggesting that your family should be murdered. This conversation happened directly in front of a teacher. No one said anything. There needs to be an emphasis on teaching the origin of certain racial slurs and their place in dehumanizing others. Teach why they're wrong. Teach students the hard and horrifying truth of these words. History cannot be ignored or else it will be repeated. We need to eliminate the ignorance and disregard for others that's so common in the sheltered school. There needs to be a stated emphasis on reporting these emphases in a verbal outline of what happens if these incidents occur. Have students hold each other accountable. Speak on the importance of coming to administration and normalize it. Many students never report anything for fear of retaliation. Others don't believe the system works or cares. From a senior at Wachusett. As a white student at Wachusett, I see racism less than a student who isn't white. The main thing I see at the high school is the use of the N-word primarily by white students. I think that's highly inappropriate, especially hearing it being screamed across the room or out loud for fun when no administrator does anything to stop the use of this language. Other racial slurs aren't uncommon either. They mainly come from students who like to use the N-word, thinks that it makes them funny or cool. At the high school, maybe even starting before, we should be taught about how divides have been caused by race and learn to be sensitive to others and not use actions that target one student or group. Many white students are allies who stand with their non-white peers in reprimanding behavior, but it does scare me the amount of hatred other students possess towards a certain race, gender, or sexual orientation. We should be taught against hate and to work together as one species rather than many different races in some categories. Personally, I only know of one Black teacher at the high school. I know that the school has to hire whoever they can find, but many underclassmen of color that I spoke with wish they had more teachers like them. They can go for support in the high school because so many majority are white. I think the high school wanting to form a club or committee of students of color to check in might be a wonderful idea. I will stand up to hate and bigotry whenever I see it and work actively to stop it from happening. Next from Elise, a senior at Wachusett. Each year in English class, I've read a book that includes racial slurs, examples include Mice and Men and Huck Finn. When we read this book aloud, I've seen many students say the slur out loud. I've also seen the teacher brush this off and not talk about the history of the word. I think it's important that teachers talk about the history of racial slurs and how saying them is harmful. I think if students learn this in class, they also learn how it's wrong to use them outside of school. This message is that people of color cannot make great works of literature. I also think this limits student perspective and therefore limits student education. From another student. Hi, I'm an alumna of WRHS and want to share my experiences. First and foremost, racism. Wachusett is 92% white, and even if people don't realize, caters to the white majority. As a white woman myself, I had the privilege of not being affected by this, but I know plenty of people who have. As I moved through the high school, I noticed the microaggressions more and more. Students would drive in with Confederate flags tied to their trucks and face no consequences. Everyone would turn and glance at the one or two Black people in the room when we talked about slavery and civil rights. Posters hung up on the wall that say, "Shoot 'em up, Wachusett," and Black people would get stopped in the hallway way more than whites. Furthermore, there's only one Black teacher in the entire school, and people always tell her she looks like Michelle Obama simply because she's Black, shares her name, which perpetuates the stereotype that all Black people look the same. During my senior year, one issue in particular took place that I'm sure everyone's heard about because of how bad it was. But a girl in my graduating class sent some very racist comments to another girl in my class, saying that she looked like a probus monkey with a nose being the shape of a legit penis and having eyes that don't open, adding that she'll drop off my cat later as a peace offering so you don't starve tonight. She posted a photo on social media of a cat in a paper bag with a caption, "Chinese takeout," in which she and her friends proceeded to kick. This year, with everything going on with the Black Lives Matter movement, the racism at this school has become more clear. A student in answering a question about how we can solve police brutality said, "Well, having a Black man dead is as normal as most Black people are the ones that commit the crimes. They have given themselves that, and that's their fault. They can change their ways of being who they are." Administration has proven to be horrible in dealing with these issues as well. In the whole situation my senior year, administration did barely anything to punish the girl who said all those racist comments, and still punished the girl who received the comments who was trying to stand up for herself. A student who's a couple years older and remembers that she and her friends, while just sitting at a table in the caf, would often get passed by the police officer on duty who would stare at them, grab her taser, and let go once she walked by. One of her friends would also get stopped repeatedly in a hall when doing nothing wrong just because he was Black and looked suspicious. In fact, administration had been so bad in choosing who they stop in the hallway based on looks. Over in my 4 years, if I wanted to, I could have left the building at any time in broad daylight. No one would stop or question me because I looked the way I was and how I carried myself. Finally, I felt myself very uncomfortable having police officers in the school in the first place, especially now that they carry guns. The Holden police station is across the street, and there's any problem, they can come very fast. Beyond racism, Wachusett has other social justice issues. For instance, sexism is a problem at school. I've experienced it by Wachusett students twice this summer alone, and I've graduated, so don't spend a lot of time with Wachusett students. But I know many other girls, past and present, Wachusett faced a similar problem. In my class, I heard about a nude collection that some of the boys had, which they share girls' nudes with one another and rank them from common to rare. I don't know if the administration knew about this, but if they did, they didn't do anything. Other than the way students read each other, however, the administration deals with it, and the way they talk about it isn't great either. While some point out the dress up code makes sense of wearing pants and shirts and shoes and not hiding your face, most parts are directed towards female girls, such as tops without straps that reveal midriffs or backless shirts. These rules imply that it's okay to objectify women based on the way they dress. I've seen boys show up to school wearing not barely a shirt and not facing any consequences for it. So why should girls be prohibited from wearing a crop top, a strapless shirt, or backless shirt on a hot day if they feel like it? Furthermore, while I agree that self-defense for women's class is needed and I appreciate it being offered, the school shouldn't just be teaching girls how to defend ourselves. They should be teaching boys how to respect women. It's not enough to treat the symptom of the problem. It will only be solved when we get to the root. With that, I'm going to yield my time for my comments this evening and go to the student rep report. Catherine Kenichi.
Hi. So those 6 comments that you just heard from
Catherine, I think you're frozen. Kenichi, do you want to start tonight and then we can go back to Catherine?
Sure. May I screen share? Am I able to do that?
What do you need to share? Can you?
It's just a tab. It's a website that we made that just has a collection of all the reports and.
Sure. I'm not sure if you're able to, but if you email it to me, I could probably help.
I'm just gonna try this real quick.
Catherine,
is this working?
No, I think I have to do it, Kenichi. So
okay.
Email it to me. Catherine's back, so I'll let you start chatting, and then I'll work through the tech issues. Oh. Catherine, are you with us? I think you're muted on your phone, hon.
I'm sorry. I don't know what's going on with my Chromebook right now.
It knows that school is coming Wednesday.
So I know. I hope that doesn't happen Wednesday. That'd be very scary. But those 6 comments that you guys just heard were read as part of comments I collected for the Diversity, Equity, and Anti-Racism Subcommittee. So there are 50 of those comments, and they were all emailed to you. I think they're in Dr. McCall's report, but there's over 50 of them, and they're all student statements about racism they received in Wachusett. They were collected through a Google form or conversations with me through either our Instagram or through my email. And so those were all shared with the subcommittee, and Chair Weeks was on the call, and she thought they were so moving that she asked me to pick out a few that I could share with you guys and then the public as well. And then so for like the report, textbook pickup has been happening at the end of last week, and then this like today, and then tomorrow is the seniors for the last day. We also distributed all the Chromebooks to all the freshmen. So that is happening. So students will be getting textbooks or any books they need for classes if the teacher chooses to provide them. Senior boot camp happened the past week. So college admissions people came to in to report about their school. So like schools like UMass Amherst talked about their test optional policy. Guidance counselors gave presentations on how to use some of the different online platforms like the Common App. So that was all really helpful for seniors about how college admissions stuff works. And then freshman orientation, I had talked about that last time. That was overall very successful. We combined 2 freshman homerooms, so we had 10 senior mentors, about 40 freshmen, a few administrators on the call, and then Miss Monteverdi, who runs the NHS Senior Mentor Program, all come on the call to help the freshmen get ready to go back to school and to help them feel a little bit more of a normalcy event. Stuco has begun to plan fall events. So a few examples are there's a senior sunrise on Wednesday morning for the seniors to kick off their senior year, as well as a senior drive-through that will be happening for the seniors to drive through the school as sort of a mini rolling rally like the seniors did last year, to just kick off the senior year. And there are several events for all grades in the works to make sure everyone feels included and we can get some of those events. One thing from our social media side, we do have an Instagram and we just created a Facebook group. It's What You Said Student Reports, or WRSDC Student Reports. So you can join that group. It's a public group. Anyone can see that if Facebook is your preferred social media compared to Instagram. All the posts are the same. You get the same information. So this week we've been running a countdown to school with tips from our student reps. We also had several teachers and administrators from all grade levels work on that, so that those weren't just tailored to high school kids, but middle school students as well. And then there are parent tips on our Facebook page to help the parents, to help the kids get ready to go back to school. Well, so those were shared this week, and all of our reports and anything that you need about school committee that we share on that Facebook, as well as our Instagram, which we had mentioned earlier in the year, which is wrsdc.student.reports. That's all I have for tonight. I know there was a lot. Wow.
That was good, and school hasn't even started yet. Kenichi, I don't think did you send over that website to me?
I should have sent.
Oh, yep, got it now. Let me see if I can get it up for you.
Thank you.
Yep, give me 2 seconds. Yep, I think I should be able to. Hold on 1 second. Let's see. Share now. There we go. Are you guys seeing this? Kenichi, can you see it?
Yep.
Okay,
Wait, not yet. There was a small notification that popped up in the corner, and I don't know what that meant. Oh, now I see it. Yep.
I'll put this on do not disturb, so you won't be bothered. All right, here we go.
Yep. So this is the website that we made for the student representatives. It's just called WRSDC Student Reports. This is where we have all of our student reports. So if you go under the reports page,
yep.
You can see that there's a button that's a link to all the Google Docs. And then we also added the videos that are recorded for every single meeting. There's also a resources tab and a links tab. Both of them you can use to access the different resources that are presented in these meetings. Most of these resources can also be found on the WRSD website. So if they're not here, then please go to the WRSD website. That should be under the links page. Yep. Actually, that's the school committee website.
Okay.
But if you go to the homepage of the WRSD website, all the resources that are presented in these meetings can be found. There's also a small social media tab on the very right-hand side. That is a link to the Facebook and Instagram pages that Kate talked about earlier.
Awesome.
Okay.
I feel like we actually planned this presentation, even though we didn't. This is fantastic. I have never seen such an amazing effort. Thank you so much to you and to Catherine. Is there an easy way to access the sites? I think, I mean, I have it in my browser, but is there an easy way to get?
If you go to the Facebook page, the link to the website is in its bio.
Okay. So if they go here to the Facebook group, then they can access the webpage?
Yep.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much for your hard work and diligence. And you haven't even started school yet, so you're going to get busier once things get rolling. Okay. Thank you so much, Catherine, and thank you so much, Kenichi. Next is the superintendent's report. Does the superintendent wish to highlight anything from his report?
Well, if you don't mind, I'd just like to talk a little bit about some of the things we just heard from our student representatives and some of our other students. First, first and foremost, when we start talking about some of the different things that have happened over the past several months, I think it's really good for us to kind of pull back and look at the complexities associated with everything that's been going on in this country for over 250 years. I did have the opportunity to talk with the student several weeks ago about the concept of the Mountaineer. The Mountaineer is something that I know Principal Biendo and other students have brought this kind of to the forefront of discussion in the past. And I think in the same way that people are connected to certain symbols or people from the past, it's definitely something I think we need to think about seriously, because when I think about the whole concept of welcoming, that's really kind of the issue that I have to deal with. But I did want to thank them for their comments. I also wanted to thank Catherine and Tanichi for all of their hard work around pulling all of this together. They're probably not going to have quite as much time once school starts really rolling. But I appreciate all the groundwork that has been laid for this. Having input at this level from students, that's really what makes a school. I really feel as though we're in a situation where, this is your school. This is your school district. The adults are here to help guide, but ultimately, we're looking toward you, and we're looking for you to take on these leadership roles, because you're going to be the ones sitting in these seats, hopefully not virtually, and you'll be able to do it in person someday, but you'll be the ones sitting in these seats making these important decisions. So the fact that you're taking these active, persistent, caring, thoughtful, reflective decisions and bringing them to the forefront in conversations that I think are difficult. And I think many people try to stray away from difficult conversations, but the fact that they're continuing, I think just shows the fortitude that you as a student body that you have. So I'm very proud of everything that I heard this evening in terms of the support that you're looking to help to provide other people, the growth that you're looking for from us, from our community, from me as your superintendent. I take that personally in terms of I want to show you that we can be a better district. And I believe all of us want to do that. So, thank you. And I appreciate that. In reference to my report tonight, again, there were many different items in the report that kind of tied back to some of the different things that we were looking at in reference to schedules and so forth. I did have the opportunity to share 2 more schedules that were, basically, I want to make sure that they were really finalized before they went out. So we were able to share those with school committee a little earlier this evening before the meeting. But those were just, again, the high school is the high school schedule. The middle school schedule is a representation of the middle school schedule of one in the district. Elementary, same thing. But the preschool schedule is the preschool schedule. Again, principals, Deputy Brulot, have spent an inordinate amount of time, just piecing these items together so that we're in a place where we're going to be able to provide the best possible remote education experience that we can for our kids, right now. That was an important thing that I wanted to, make sure we got out there. There was also, and we'll talk about this in some of the motions, but we did have the opportunity to speak last week. I had the opportunity to speak with AA Transportation and also Vanpool, and we're having our conversations around how things are going to work with buses and vans and so forth in terms of transporting our kids safely to and from school. And I know we're also looking at continuing our relationship with both of those companies for the foreseeable future. And, as we kind of go through what we're thinking we want to be able to do to support them, again, administration's making the recommendation that we support the motion that's on the table this evening for the 75% payment for from basically March to July for these companies. These are companies that and again, I lay it out in my report, so I won't go back into it. But I can tell you that these are companies that have stepped up when we've asked them to step up. They have been there to help us out. They helped take over when we were in dire straits when Atlantic Express filed for bankruptcy and basically gave us 30 days to, come up with a new plan, because they weren't going to provide transportation services to our district and many other districts in New England after January 1st. So I did just want to emphasize that. I can tell you we had an excellent turnout the other evening, and I'll ask Director Keenan can talk a little bit about the presentation that occurred the other night, but we had an excellent turnout for that. And Brendan, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure, thank you. So this is what Daryl's referencing is the Caring for Your Child During COVID webinar that we hosted the other night. This was done in partnership with the UMass Medical Child Trauma Training Center. And the director and the co-trainer are parents that live within the district. So we decided to do this based on what we've been hearing from parents, just about the stress that was accumulating at home, and really questions about parenting that wouldn't really be our place to speak to. So we really had a great turnout. I just want to tell people that you can still view the webinar on our YouTube channel. And the feedback we received from people is that it did exactly what we hoped. It gave practical strategies and really a roadmap for how to navigate this difficult terrain. And home has been a very stressful place for people, and we recognize that. So, I just want to thank, publicly Barry Sklar and our tech department, who are they should be the sung heroes, and they are. We didn't think we'd be in the webinar business before all of this, and we're able to host these things pretty readily now. So, and also, UMass Medical has been a great partner to us as well. So we're lucky to have people that step up during our times of need here.
Thank you, Brendan. And again, I want to echo Brendan's praise for Barry and his crew. They continue to do yeoman's work and go well above and beyond anything that we would have expected at this time. So thank you to them, and thank you to Brendan for keeping that rolling. Again, the SEL piece is an important part that we keep looking at, and how we can help support families through this. This time is going to be vital for us as a community and as a school district. One other item I did want to just quickly touch on within my report. We just had our Facility and Security Subcommittee meeting prior to this meeting this evening at 6 o'clock, and I reviewed kind of the status of where we're at with all of the buildings. That was in my report, so I just talked through that a little bit more at our meeting prior to this. I can tell you we're in a pretty good place all the way around it in reference to HVAC systems, in reference to our air circulation in our buildings. We're continuing to work on a couple of places where we have some pneumatic line issues, and that comes back to heating. But the air circulation works in almost every one of our classrooms in the district, so we're really happy with that. We're fixing some motors. There are some, few different places where we're fixing thermostats. We're doing some other things like that. But overall, we feel like we're in a really good position right now. As in terms of our buildings. So I would like to thank Jim Cavello, Bob, Craig, our crew that has been going around really pulling all of this together. And our custodial staff and our building principals, they've done a fantastic job in terms of making sure that all the mechanisms that we need to ensure that the buildings are safe are being met. I think I talked about this maybe last time. We are purchasing CO2 meters for all of the classrooms to measure the CO2 in classes once kids are actually back in the classrooms. And we're also purchasing airflow meters to ensure that we have enough airflow going through our univents, and those will be spot checked during the day. And we'll keep logs of all of that information so that we're managing to have a safe learning environment and also a safe working environment for our staff. So that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. McCall. We're now going to be able to have discussion of the report. As a member pointed out as a point of order earlier, we typically discussed the report itself and what's included in the report. I'm going to try to stay to our 2 minutes tonight. The only option, guys, that I have other than trying to keep you guys honest is to put up a timer, and I don't want to do that. So I do ask that you look at your own clock when you do begin your speaking, and do police yourself. Maybe write out your comments in advance so you know what you need to ask. We're going to start tonight with member Imber. He's actually never gone first, and he had his hand raised.
Yeah, so hi, I hope everybody's doing okay. Daryl, I noticed the shifting numbers with homeschooling and also with private or independent schools. And so I'm wondering what we're doing in terms of reaching out to our legislators and DESE so that they take a look at that October 1st deadline, given the anomaly of this year, and either waive that deadline or not use it in terms of funding for next year. Can you tell me where we are with that and what your plans are, please?
Sure, Bob. So I can tell you I was on a call with the commissioner late last week, and that question was thrown out there, gosh, I believe to Russ Johnson around the October 1 deadline. The October 1 deadline is not going to change according to DESE right now, but they are collecting information pertaining to, and again, it's very informal, but how many kids are coming in for kindergarten? How many kids are going to homeschool? How many kids are leaving for parochial schools or private schools? So what they're doing is they're building a base for an argument around what we might have to do, not us, but what might have to happen at the legislative level around the Chapter 70 funding and how that's going to play out, because every district is being adversely affected by kids leaving their districts in some form or fashion. So, I can tell you we have, more homeschool kids, more kids who are going to parochial and private schools than we've ever had. But then what's interesting is that we also have about 60 more kids in kindergarten this year than we did last year at this time. So we're definitely seeing kind of an interesting mix, occurring. But I do know that we're, Senator Goby and Representative Ferguson are actively working through this situation as well, and they're advocating on our behalf. I know MARS, the Mass Association of Regional School Districts, as well as MASS, the Superintendent's Group, we're all working to push this concept of basically revamping how the system works in terms of the allocation per pupil, not per pupil, but the dollar amount for Chapter 70, Bob.
Okay, so and would you please keep us informed, and if we can play an advocacy role, that's great. And of course, if the Superintendent's Association can play an advocacy role, that would be great, because I think it's going to be needed. So thanks.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely will.
Okay.
Thank you, member Imber. We're going to go straight down to member Kirschenbaum, please.
Thank you. I just want to thank the administration for this report and all the details in it. I know that you are doing yeoman's work at this point, trying to get everything up and running for a hybrid transition. And I just appreciate everything that you're doing. I have no further questions.
Thank you, member Kirschenbaum. We're going to go to member Lavoie, please.
All right, I want to thank administration for the report. I do want to raise a few concerns to the school committee. We've all been CC'd on emails this past week from stakeholders that might be impacted as our most needy students, and really a call for help for them to get back to school. And I do find it disheartening that I didn't see any response from the superintendent to any of those emails. And in the past, we've seen the superintendent actually respond. I took the time to respond to a few individuals, and they responded back saying that they hadn't heard from anybody. And that concerns me. When I hear the superintendent mention that schools are in good shape, we heard the same thing for extended school year, and there doesn't seem to be a definitive plan to get these kids back to school. And I guess I have a question for administration, which is, what are we waiting for? Besides the dates in the quote unquote fluid plan, what are we waiting for?
Thank you, Member Lavoy. I'll allow the superintendent. So what is the, other than the fact that we put dates on paper, I think he's asking, what are we waiting for to return to school?
Matt, is your question specifically for that October 5th date?
It's specifically for everything, Daryl, for the last three. I'll give you an example. I drive into Rutland every day, and there's a sign advertising a flu clinic at Naquag Elementary for November 7th. So we're going to have our most vulnerable people in Rutland go to get flu shots in a school, yet we're not going to have our kids back in a hybrid model. So I'm trying to figure out what our plan was talked about as being fluid. We know there's a need to get kids back in school. We know in Rutland, we have seen 0 increase in COVID cases in 3 weeks straight. We know states like Montana are facing their 3rd week of back to school, and they've done contact tracing and said that the 2 causes of COVID are bars and weddings. They haven't traced anything back to school. So I'm trying to get an answer from you in terms of what metrics are we gauging our return to school on.
Thank you, Member Lavoy.
So, it's interesting. We had the opportunity to meet with the boards of health today and several of our school nurses, and we talked about the metrics that I think I shared with you that came out from DESE probably about 3 weeks ago now, maybe 4 weeks ago. In reference to the number of cases and the ratio associated with a number of 100,000 people per community. So as of last week, Holden was had just been classified as yellow. So last week and the week before, they were Holden was in the yellow kind of area, which is the hybrid or remote, if you look at it in that light. I'm not sure where they're going to be this week. I have a feeling it's probably going to drop down a little bit.
I'm not concerned with Holden, Daryl. I'm concerned with the district. Every other.
Member Lavoy, you had your 2 minutes, so I'm just
My
wondering.
question was related around Rutland. I'm not concerned about Holden.
Member Lavoy, you've had your 2 minutes, and actually you've had 3 to 4, so I'm going to let the superintendent answer.
So, okay, so I'll try to answer this as succinctly as possible. We will, again, when I met with the boards of health today, we talked about, what might happen if one town's really high and one town's really low. We need to talk about that. I need to reach out directly to DESE, and that's what I said today to them, that I'm going to reach out to the commissioner to ask him about that, because other regional districts are going to run into this situation where you're going to have one community very high, and can that community just be shut down, go remote, while the other ones stay hybrid or stay in a hybrid model. So I will share that information back out with the committee.
I guess my time's up, but my question wasn't answered in terms of what metrics we're following. I just heard that we have a report that says Holden's yellow.
Okay, thank you. Sometimes.
You know what, Matt? Did you read my report?
Did I read your report, Dr.
Yeah, no.
McCall?
Did you look at the metrics? Did you look at the metrics in the report?
I did. I did.
Okay.
Okay, thank you both. Member Longbaliel.
Thank you. Thank you, Daryl, and the rest of the administration for all the hard work you've been putting into this. It's clear that you put a tremendous amount of thought into things. I did also have the same concern that Member Lavoy had about a couple of emails we got from parents of kids in special education who were unclear as to when their children were going to be back in school. I know that we were going to face some kids in October 5th and then some others October 26th, and those parents did not seem to know if their children were part of those cohorts or not. And I just wondered, what have parents in special education been told about when their children will be back in the classroom, and how have they been told? By letter, by email? I just want to be clear about that.
Thank you for that question, Linda. I'm going to defer this to Christine Smith because Christine and I talked a little bit about this a little earlier today. Christine, you on?
Sure, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. So all of our special education coordinators over the course of the last 2 weeks have been contacting families that will be starting for the October 5th, that have students that will be starting on October the 5th. Those, and then all of the special education teachers across the district have been in touch with all of the families over the course of the last 2 weeks in creating the parent engagement special education learning plan. As of last Friday, we had about 40 parents that we had reached out to that we hadn't heard back from, that we were still waiting for their responses. And in fact, we are still waiting to hear from quite a few families as we try to create the transportation lists and class lists and align PPE resources to the buildings that will be in use. So as of tomorrow night, at the very latest, all of our families should have, all of the special education families should have a document in hand that is describing how the IEP services will be implemented differently than how the IEP describes. So we were given that permission from DESE to talk about how accommodations and services would be provided differently during the remote or hybrid time. And that would be denoted on this parent engagement special education learning plan.
Okay, thank you. That's my only question for now.
Thank you, Member Longbilia, and thank you, Director Smith. Member Mills, please.
All right, 2 observations and a question. The first observation is I concur with previous members that we need to be clear about what our metric is for reopening or not reopening. 3 high schools, 2 regionals in the state. This week there was a party, and they're closed for 2 weeks because of a party. And I think there are students who are unaware that party was a metric, right? And that wasn't set up ahead of time. So I think it's important that we establish what the metrics are, and I think we've been asking for that for quite some time, and really don't have that answer. And I do believe DESE's been pretty clear that there's a bellwether town in each of the regionals, which is the largest town. So Holden is the gatekeeper, and I'm pretty sure DESE was clear about that. So if that's not the case, please share that with us. Secondly, hybrid versus remote. In your report, you mentioned again that we're going to send out a survey. Every meeting I've said this, but I really think you need to be telling the parents what they're being surveyed for. If I don't know what remote looks like, I don't know what hybrid looks like, I don't know what to say my kid's going to do. So I think that's really only meaningful if you give some idea about what those options are going to look like. If my kid's remote, but everyone else is hybrid, what is she going to get? Vice versa. Third, my question, I was kind of disturbed in an email we got from the district that was actually sent to staff, but also is in Mr. Carlson's report about the fact that we weren't using our electronic system for substitutes. I was concerned that the implication there is that we wouldn't have substitutes, and if teachers are sick, which they'll still be when they're remote, we can't just give the kids the day off. So I know we might not be getting external substitutes, but what is the plan for substitutes when teachers are sick? It can't just be schools off.
Thank you, Member Mills. And Member Longbilia, if you don't mind muting, there's a little feedback coming from you.
Oh, okay.
1:43, Megan.
Oh, you have one more?
1:43 time, yes.
1:43. Okay. Thank you for timing yourself.
Yes.
I appreciate it.
17 seconds left, Ken. So yes, Holden is a bellwether community in terms of the 5 towns that we look at. In reference to the survey, that's information that we're defining so that we can get that out, because I agree that we want to have something out there so people can actually compare. And then finally, in reference to substitutes, one of the things we will be looking at because we have paraprofessionals who will be sitting in on most of those classrooms, we'll be looking at having them serve as substitutes if that is necessary for a teacher that is calling in sick remotely during this time, so that we're able to have that consistency, because trying to bring somebody in that has no idea what's going on in a remote setting is impossible.
Thank you both. Sometimes I can't get the unmute to go. At the bottom bar keeps Google Meets issues. I don't believe, Madam Secretary, that Member Mitchell is with us tonight.
No, Ben is not.
Okay. So then we'll go to Member Otmar, please.
All right, thank you. Again, just want to echo thank you to all the students that contributed through public comment, as well as for all the work that our student reps have done with everything you guys put together. Looks amazing. Well done. The only thing I'll just say, I'll pretty much for our next meeting, I'm looking forward to hearing kind of some of the lessons that we're able to gain from some of these other districts that have maybe already started hybrid. Like I said, hopefully Daryl, you've got something, some mechanism to reach out to some of your peer superintendents to be like, hey, how things going? What's working? What's not working? So that hopefully our next meeting, the end of the month, we'll be able to kind of hear some of those thoughts, and hopefully they'll be kind of able to feed into kind of some more information about what our hybrid is going to look like. Thank you.
Sure, and I can just to jump in real quick, Carl. I know on Friday afternoon, Principal Biandu and I had a lengthy conversation just about his conversations that he will be having with a couple of high school principals in the Wachusett area who will be going back hybrid, who have larger schools. Some that none are as large as ours, but have larger schools because again we continue to look at ensuring that we have the capacity to adequately get through lunch, adequately bring all the kids into the building, adequately have all the kids exit out of the building, because we have so many kids coming in, even at half capacity. We're still talking between 900 and 1,000 students entering that building with approximately 200 adults who also work there. So it's still a large number of people in that space. So yes, we're already on that, and MASS, we do have a really strong listserv where we've been throwing questions out to one another about how things are working thus far.
Thank you.
Thank you, Member Otmar. Member Shapiro has already let me know that she's unable to attend tonight. Member Silva, are you with us?
Yes, I am. So just wanted to say thank you for the information that you provided, Daryl. I just wanted to reiterate, the previous comments of we really need metrics to understand what we're really abiding by in terms of when we would be going hybrid. I'm always going to push for whatever is the most safest for each and every student. I truly believe, just like what the student rep said when it came to the image and how it makes every student feel, it's the same policy that I believe in even the hybrid is making sure that each and every student is safe, and we can assure that. Now, the other thing is I would like to see that what Member Mills had said, if you provided what the remote schedule would look like for preschoolers and middle schoolers, I'd like to compare what would it look like if my child was in hybrid. So that, as Member Mills stated, I would know with the survey, what am I voting for? What does my day-to-day look like for my child? And second of all, I'd like to reiterate, we talked a lot about safety and opening of schools and ventilation. I was a little concerned last time in our meeting, we mentioned air filters or air purifiers, and I have not seen any. If we could share with us any actually data from reputable source that says that is what can prevent or helps prevent, because from what I've seen, it was only outdoor or opening the windows, not necessarily an air purifier. So that concerns me. And lastly, I just wanted to reiterate that whatever numbers we're looking at, we need to remember that's from past 2 weeks. So whatever decision we're going to be making, we're making a decision from the past 2 weeks. So whatever numbers we're seeing, we need to remember we had a long weekend. So until people have accepted that they have partied or they have met over the long weekend, we can't accept those numbers until 2 weeks from now.
Thank you, Member Silva. And actually, Madam Secretary, could you mute yourself when you have a moment? Thank you. Dr. McCall?
Yeah, just Asma, you're right. As we look at this, the commissioner did send something out a little earlier this evening, basically saying that before districts make decisions, I think some people are probably familiar with what happened at the end of last week. I believe Dedham and another school district, both of whom were slated to start this week in hybrid, because they had upticks in numbers and they jumped into the red. They actually decided to just go full out remote without an end date. They just said, we're going remote. So there was some clarification that was put out there around a 3-week window to look at, not just a 2-week window, but you're exactly right. It is past. One of the concerns that we talked about today with the boards of health was the fact that after all the recent holidays, so after July, the 4th of July, Memorial Day, 4th of July, now Labor Day, for those 2 holidays, there were good sized spikes in terms of the COVID numbers because of get-togethers and gatherings and so forth. So people are preparing for that as well in terms of numbers going up. Maybe not immediately, but again, that's it. We're going to see I think a steady trend in the next few days in terms of that going up, and hopefully it doesn't go up too high. But yeah, I agree that that's something that we're going to keep an eye on as well.
Thank you very much. Member Smith? I think she's having a connection issue. She just dropped off for a moment. I'm going to go to Member Williamson and then circle back.
Oh, sorry, I'm here. I hit the wrong button. I hit that phone button instead of the unmute button and got myself out of the meeting.
When I'm trying to get the bar to move. Go ahead.
So sorry. So thank you for waiting for a minute. So number one, I'll be brief. In your report, you mentioned passing the FY21 budget and bringing us to 5 out of 5 towns supporting the budget for this year. And I'm grateful as well for our 5-town community support. So thank you to all the supporters in all 5 of our towns and recently in Paxton. Thank you. I'd also like to thank the administration for hosting the Caring for Your Child During COVID seminar that you put on and that Director Keenan wrote about as well in his report. Thank you for doing that and for posting that on the website for the community. I think that's very important, as you've already mentioned. I also echo the desire for clarity on the metrics to open and close schools, especially in our complicated situation in having, as Member Mills described, with all of the different entities and our different schools in our towns and the large square mileage that we have and the number of people that we have in our towns. And I'd also like to just thank you all for your work and for to thank you, Daryl, and to thank your staff for everything that they're doing. I know this is a demanding time for everyone and for everyone at home as well, all the families, everyone in our community and our society. And I thank you for everything that you're doing as you try to balance the many needs that we have, that we all have, but also keeping in mind our health and safety as a school, in our school district and our community. And I really appreciate that. And that is it. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Member Smith. Member Williamson.
I just wanted to start by wishing the administration and the teachers and the staff a good first few days with the kids. It's been a ton of work to get here, but I think that the overwhelming feeling is going to be that everybody's glad to be back together, even in a remote setting. I also loved having the opportunity to see Dr. Forkey's presentation for our caregivers. And the one thing that I would ask is that the administration consider having her do some work with the staff. She has the potential to impact the staff in a huge way. I think our staff is going to see more students struggling emotionally this year than we have in the past. And if she can provide the teachers with some strategies that go hand in hand with what the caregivers have, I think that's going to be really powerful for kids. So I just think that'd be a good thing to consider. Thank you.
Yeah, and that's a great point. I know Director Keenan did say that she worked with our counselors and nurses last week already. So we're starting that process.
Right, that's awesome.
Thank you so much. Member Woodland, please.
Hi, so I have a few things. One, I just want to make a note that at least I have not been getting parent emails about SPED issues or remote versus hybrid. I've gotten some general ones, but if you're not getting a response back to me, it's because I didn't see this, get an email. Otherwise, I have a question about in the report about the cuts that were made, the tiered cuts, and about how there's still a 1.5 custodian positions cut. And I was curious about that because there's going to be an increased amount of sanitizing protocols whenever we do enter into hybrid and in person. And that seems like an odd place to cut. So that's one question. And then the other point is just a question about communication of our hardest to reach students. We know that there are 3 groups of students who are the hardest to reach remotely versus in person. There's the special education, there's pre-K, there's elementary. And I found it curious that those were the 3 areas that we did not have an update on in the report this time. And that's my only comment at this time. Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Thank you. Yeah, Linda, and thank you for that question around the staffing. So in terms of the custodial, I believe one of those, it was a position that was already not filled. It hadn't been filled for a while. So that was where that reduction happened. So it was one that had literally been open for a long time. And the half a position, I believe, I'm trying to recall. Jeff, if you can just jump in on this one, if you remember where the half one came from.
Yes, Daryl, the half was from the Thomas Prince School.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. And again, I think, thanks, Jeff. So, when going through this, all of these with building principals and so forth, they were really confident that they had the custodial staff that they would need, in terms of being able to continue to maintain their model for cleanliness. No matter what's going to happen this time, once kids are in buildings, it's going to look different in the sense that there's going to be, custodians are going to be spending time wiping down high touch areas. I mean, that's going to be their focus, for much of the day. So yes, they'll have to deal with, somebody unfortunately getting sick someplace or something else that they're going to have to deal with completely. But what the part that's going to be, I think, different is the ongoing. It's just going to be nonstop. They're going to be walking by, cleaning handles, cleaning, surface areas where people touch. Cleaning door pushes. So all of those types of things are going to be, something that they're just going to do. So it'll be a change in routine, but it's one that, we're very confident they're going to be able to handle.
Thank you very much. Bob, I'll get back to you once we do our go round. We're almost back around. So we're going to do member Young. We'll get through the top of the order and then we'll get back to you, Bob.
Thanks. I had a panic second. I just undocked my computer, but I'm back. All right. So I had 2 quick things. In the report, you had all the HVAC issues in the buildings. We discussed that at the facilities and security meeting. I'll go a little more into detail during the updates, but basically it was great. I was really impressed with it. We went through every building. They should all be online by October 5th, and a few just need thermostat work after that for the heating season. Then other things that can be put off and will be done later this year. And the other thing is, I feel a little like a broken record. I mean, it's what I've been saying for several weeks and what a lot of other people have been saying. I am deeply concerned about getting those students that are unable to fully access remote learning, getting them back in the building on October 5th. It's many of these students are just unable to access it remotely, and they've missed over 20 weeks of school already if you're looking at including the summer, because they didn't have that either. That's over 100 days of schooling. And add in another 3 weeks from now until October 5th. So, really make that effort, really try to make that happen. And then getting in all the other kids after that, if we can. But I mean, right now that's that's the next target. That's the key. That's all I got.
Adam, you're breaking up a little bit. I think you said that's all I got.
Yep. Sorry, I think my computer's still reconnecting.
I read lips well. Dr. McCall, any response to that? But I think we've covered most of Adam's points already.
Yeah, I think we did.
Now I'm muted. Member Amos, please.
Actually, all of my questions and concerns have been mentioned by other people, so I will cede my time to someone else.
Thank you. Oh man, now I got to split 2 minutes like another 10 ways. I'll figure it out somehow. Member Ayala.
Okay, hi. I think everybody pretty much hit every question I had. I just want to echo on special education and communication, even for my own sake. It wasn't what I expected it to be, I guess. I expected to have more communication through SPED for my own child even, and it was lacking. So definitely want to make sure that those kids are not forgotten. And I think that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Ayala. Member Bennett, please.
Hi. So yeah, thank you for everything that you have been doing, and I would like to mention that I was personally called about my child coming into the school. I got a personal phone call. I got several emails introducing themselves to me and in inviting my child to to meet with them and everything like that. So I do know that the school is working really hard to reach out to everybody. That is in place. It is occurring. And people should be, if they haven't heard, should be hearing really, really soon from people. So thank you very much for actually being, very, very on top of that. I have not been, questioning, what's been going on with that. Yeah, that's about it. Everybody else has echoed everything that I was thinking, all of my notes. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Bennett. Member Brown, please.
Hi, yeah, I want to thank the administration for putting together that report, very detailed. And I also want to thank the 5 towns for supporting our budget. And because they did support our budget, and I know we're not getting everything from the state, but I do believe that we should be paying AA transportation. We have obligations. We do have the funding. And they did come down 25%. And I know we're going to be taking that up later on tonight. Also, my son is a high needs student. We did get notified on Friday and asked a lot of questions regarding the van situation and things like that. So we are getting communicated through the SPED department. And I know the public really wants us to get the students back in and the teachers back into the building. And, we do have this October 5th date. We do have the date in November. We just need to make sure that we do it safely because, again, there are students, there are employees. So we don't want to risk their health rushing this. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Member Brown. Member Ayala, I will put you on the list for the return go around. Member Dennis, please.
Thank you. So a couple questions or thoughts. First, I think I'm now the 7th member tonight to mention, the metrics for what was termed the metrics for moving the hybrid, or the different phases of hybrid. And what I'd suggest is that I'm not so sure that these are metrics as much as what I'm referring to as entry criteria, right? So this isn't necessarily just about metrics that you might discuss with the Board of Health, although that might be a component, I think that there are several criteria that need to be met for us to meet the no sooner than October 5th date, right? And so I think we've been asking now, I think this is at least the fourth meeting where we've been asking for, what are those criteria? I'm sure that when we first talked about opening schools, why couldn't we do it sooner? The buildings weren't ready. So what's the criteria around buildings? What's the criteria around cost? What's the criteria around staffing? What's the criteria around health metrics? If we were to have a dashboard that we could show to the administration, to the school committee, to the public, what would be on that dashboard to let us know that we're on track for October 5th? And so I guess I'd ask the question this way. Are we on track for opening for phase 1 on October 5th? And how do we know?
So I can tell you, if we had a dashboard, that actually is a decent idea in terms of putting information out there for people to see. Buildings are an important part of what we want to ensure that we have, ready to roll. And we feel as though we're in a really good place with where we're at in terms of our HVAC systems and our upgrading some of our heating systems. I spoke about that this evening in terms of the pneumatic lines over at Paxton Center, and we have a couple systems over at Central Tree that we're updating right now. So that would be one of the areas, having our staff, in terms of having an MOA, so we're ready to go with that. Moving forward with our transportation vendor and having the capacity to do that correctly. And ultimately, it's just we want to ensure that we have a time frame that is established that is doable. So by looking at this in terms of what we have that we're in control of, that's where we're at. I understand what you're saying about the metrics that I talk about with the boards of health. And those have been the things that we've been going back and forth on, because again, they're also kind of at that point where they're like, well, we're not really sure what the metrics might be for school. In many communities where it's one district in one town, they make that decision collectively and say, okay, here's what it's going to be for this town. And they might look at some of the other surrounding communities. So that's where we're at with that. But when we're just talking about what a dashboard might have, it would be building preparedness. It would be the staffing. It would be the busing as well.
So I'm not sure that you've answered whether we're on track for phase 1, but I would suggest that what needs to be clear for the public.
Yeah, we're on track for phase 1.
Thank you. So I think what would make it clear for the public and for those trying to understand and consume this, again, for each phase, understanding explicitly what those criteria are, again, subject to, whether or not there are things that we don't think of that are subject to change. The second and final question or thought that I want to share is around those roughly 300 students that have left the district. We've talked about this at Business and Finance, and there are really two types of impacts. One is a financial impact that we're expecting will present itself for next year. And two is that there's a service level impact. And so what I encourage the administration to do, as the guidance in the different schools are processing transfers out, I know that the district has been collecting information on why students are leaving. I think that's important information.
If you can be a little concise, that would be helpful.
I was just wrapping up. Thank you. So I was asking that the administration present information on why students are leaving the district and continue to update us on those numbers, as I see that one of the categories was updated since we've met last, but the others have not. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Member Demis. Member Gustafson, I know your connection okay? I know you're kind of
for now.
Okay, I've got you loud and clear.
If not, I'll get rid of my video. We'll see. I will try to talk fast because the 2 minutes, I always do. I appreciate the detail in the report this week and having the details of schedules and the HVAC information. It was very helpful. I appreciate having reports from other administrators on their areas. one question I had for Jeff, which he can answer later if he's here, or maybe Daryl can answer, is that I noticed we're hiring paraprofessionals, or maybe Christine can answer this. I'm curious if those are new positions or if those are replacing, people who have retired or chosen not to come back for some reason. So that is one question, and then I have a bigger question.
You want to do let's do one at a time because sometimes I forget.
Okay, no problem.
Is that okay?
Yes, certainly. So the positions that are posted are positions that are replacing folks that have left. We've gone through all of the staff that were furloughed or laid off and have gone through all of the callbacks, and the positions remain vacant. Sorry, I lost that word for a minute.
No worries. I appreciate that. I was just curious when I saw that report, since I know we were cutting some. So thank you. So my bigger question is that the building readiness question, which has come up. And at Business and Finance this week, we also talked about building readiness. And during that discussion, one thing that was made clear was that most of our buildings should be ready by October. A lot of them are almost ready now. But that if a few individual classrooms are not ready by then, it would not prevent us from using the entire building, and we would still be able to have students return as planned. Hearing this, and given what I had heard at our last school committee meeting when I asked the same question of the superintendent and was told, well, when the entire building is ready, I have some concerns about the district inconsistency around this. If this is a good enough rationale and standard in October, why we can't start applying it now, this week. If we have buildings that are ready by our own reports, why we can't begin to have students, our most needy students, in those buildings now instead of October and November. I know we've tried in earnest over the summer, and there were other reasons they couldn't return, but given that I was told this rationale was what we would use in October on Monday, I really have concerns about why we can't apply that now. And we'll also remind us, as we know, that we don't have a legal obligation to offer AP classes or athletics to our students, but we do have a legal obligation to educate every single one of our students, including the most needy. And I'm very concerned, as are a lot of our families, that we are not doing that as soon as humanly possible, like tomorrow or the next day. And they don't travel, a lot of them, on the regular buses. They have other transportation. So that, I think, takes away a lot of that concern. And I'm really just, I don't think we've gotten a really good answer. And I'm very concerned if it's good enough in October to use most of the building and not those few classrooms, why we can't apply that rationale right now to the buildings that some of those students would be in. So thank you.
So Chris, I don't know if you want to jump in a little bit on this as well.
On my microphone, that would be better. Sorry, guys.
Okay.
We are making progress. We are making, we have the date of October the 5th looming on us, and we still feel like that is we're still pushing ourselves faster and faster to get things done. The multi-layered impact of each decision is so complex. And I don't mean to, there's not this huge force of people that are making this all possible. We are at the process of talking to families. We couldn't talk to families till we had our staff back in place. We now have our staff back in place. While they were doing training, they were also talking to families about whether or not they're coming in on the bus. We don't have our bus routes ready yet. We don't have, we have to figure out how to get the 171 students that are identified as high needs students into our buildings and on these buses, when before we would put about 8 kids on a bus in some cases, and now we can at the most put 4 students on a bus. So that's just like one sort of aspect of how do we open our buildings again. So for me, on a daily basis, it feels like we are recreating what school is. There's no paradigm of this that we can rely on how we've always done business. So for every layer of decision, it's complicated by, well, at first it was the teachers weren't back in place, and then the negotiation with the teachers union, and then over the summer it was the guidance from Desi and the multiple layers of how do we reach that level of of either PPE or building awareness or social distancing. So I guess I'm struggling to communicate that the multiple layers that we go through to make these decisions doesn't look like any other paradigm that we've done before. And so with all of us leaning in, I need Daryl for a decision, and he is as available as he can be because he also has 6 or 7 other competing demands that are also brand new and multi-layered. And so we make one decision, and I guess a good example of that is trying to determine the shortened day schedule for students who are returning to school on October 5th. That shortened day schedule is also impacting the full day schedule for students who the following week may be able to go, or the next week be able to go to full days. So I don't know how else to share with you the complexity of all of that, and then you spread that out to the 11 buildings that we're using and the 200 staff people that are associated with all of this work, and everybody wants answers. I've held meetings every day with my staff, various groups of people that have really important questions that they need answers to because they need to make decisions, whether it's regarding trickling down to how are we going to make sure there are enough iPads or devices in each student's hand so that they don't have to share? And what is that? I mean, it's just mind-blowing that we cannot rely on any of the work that we've done in the past on opening school. Opening school in a regular year is tricky. Opening school in this year is mind-blowing.
Chris,
I do appreciate that. I do wish that, I know we did a lot of work this summer, and I appreciate that. And this is not a Christine question. This is a general district question. But I know we did a lot of work this summer, and we did a lot of that prep work. And so I think that's where some of the families are particularly frustrated from what I'm hearing, that they were told they were coming back this summer and then we're not. And all the work was done until Desi put out new regulations. And then we've had all this time since then to meet those regulations, and we just haven't figured out a way to do it. So I think they're very frustrated. So that's why I asked the question. I appreciate it. I have a budget question as well, but I can save that for later.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was a great discussion. Thank you guys all so much. Member Haber?
Good evening. A few things that just weren't touched on. Part of your report discussed school sports, and I did talk to Jen Lynch about sub-varsity level. She did say that they are going to play this fall, which a bunch of people had asked about, so I just wanted to mention it. In the report about how many kids have left the district, I had hoped that we were going to see in your report this time how many of the kindergartners are being homeschooled and how many we should expect back in district. It seems to me like that's a number that's going to jump back up for first grade. And the same thing on a level of each of the grade levels. Seniors who are homeschooling this year who won't be coming back, obviously. And I'm not trying to put the cart before the horse on this one, but there's so many questions still about hybrid. I know that plans are still in the works, but parents and teachers, for that matter, are looking for schedule. They're looking for time of day. Is the hybrid day going to be the same times as the remote scheduled day? Are the cohorts going to be done by alphabet? How do they know if they're going to be Monday, Tuesday, or Thursday, Friday? I mean, even if we don't have a full schedule yet and we don't know exactly what's going on, it seems like we should be able to figure that out. They're looking at childcare for November, and they can't plan without knowing what days of the week they're going to need it. And to echo what Member Mills said, we certainly can't survey before all that hybrid information is sent out. My biggest concern in our last meeting was it sounded to me like the off days of not in school were going to be pretty much asynchronous with check-ins from the teachers to make sure that they were attending. And my kids, at least, cannot learn that way. I really, if I have to choose, I want my kids to go back to school. I want them all back in school. But if they're going to go hybrid and be asynchronous 2 days out of the week, then I will keep my kids remote, hoping for a more synchronous time. So the sooner you can get the hybrid information out, the better. That's all.
Thanks, Sherry. Yeah, definitely. And you did have a question in there. If you go back to like your third comment, I believe.
The homeschooling kindergartners.
The number, you're right. So, I think I mentioned it earlier. We're actually about 60 students higher in terms of K. This year we're at like 474. And last year, October 1 was 424. So that's an interesting dynamic in terms of how the numbers are kind of playing out. Most places are seeing major hits to their full day kindergarten programs or their kindergarten programs just in general. Director Keenan is pulling that information together by grade. So that will be something that we'll be sharing out.
Thank you very much. Last but not least, Member Haynes, and then I'm going to circle back to two people. I do want to remind members that we do have a full agenda coming after the discussion of the report.
Okay, good evening. I wanted to thank the students who commented earlier tonight, and some of these same students commented at the diversity subcommittee meeting earlier. I think it was a week ago. So thank you for that and for your efforts. And I also want to thank Director Keenan. I know he is working on this. We talked a lot about that, and I am hopeful that we can make some real progress on some things that were talked about earlier tonight. That's it.
Thank you. I believe Member Imber was the first with his hand raised.
So Daryl, your comments about custodial staff and their needs reminded me of an issue we had raised a couple of meetings ago about needs of the district, even short term in terms of hires, and whether we in fact need to hire more custodians or more nurses. And I understand that would probably be pretty difficult, but has the administration thought about increases of personnel to sort of meet specific needs, short-term needs?
We could be in that situation in terms of getting more nursing support, Bob. But again, the way this is kind of playing out with the budget, it sounds as though there's not going to be any type of federal support or federal relief until after the elections in November. So that's not going to help the state, which means the state's probably not going to come out with a real budget until after that. So there's going to be too much of a waiting game for us in terms of that. So we're really trying to be careful how we kind of play that out.
And custodial?
We'll take a look. But again, we don't have a lot of money just sitting around ready to go. So we're just being very careful and cautious right now. But if we're at a place where we are so unbelievably short and we cannot keep up with whatever it is that's happening, then we'll have to look at that. Even in the good thing is by moving to a hybrid model, we're only bringing in half the number of students. So it's a very different level of cleaning. So a school like Glenwood's going to have 200 kids in it. So some parts are not going to feel like there are a lot of kids there, and it will make the cleaning part a little easier in that sense, the day-to-day cleaning. It's just we just have to really focus on the wipe downs, the high-touch areas, and that's what we keep talking about. We actually have a cleaning company working with custodians, I believe this week and next week, and they're going to be talking with them about the deep cleaning that they're going to be doing.
Okay, I just really have a concern about trying to be proactive about areas that we know are likely to be problematic. So, thanks.
Thank you, Member Imber. Member Ayala was next.
Yeah, I'll try to be brief. Sorry. I just wanted to clarify on my comment I made earlier, because I know others have had better luck with seeing communication across the board with special education. I guess my thoughts are, from what I've seen and heard from others, including myself, is the communication and the logistics of remote learning and having services. I think people, I don't know, I'm guessing the most vulnerable population is being looked at first and communicated with first, because the October 5th date, which I totally understand, but our kids go back Wednesday for remote learning, and like I myself didn't have a plan for my son's services. I didn't have anything other than knowing I have a new OT. That's all I had. And I've heard from others also that they didn't have a plan in place, or they didn't hear anything. So I think that is my biggest concern. I just wanted to clarify, but I know you guys are working really hard, and I get that from when Christine was explaining. So I thank you for that. Thanks.
Thank you, Member Ayala. Let's see, I've got Member Gustafson, Member Longbelial, Catherine, and then I guess Malia, you're just clarifying. So Malia, Longbelial, and Catherine, and then we're going to move on.
My question was a budget-related question, which is somewhat related to what was just brought up about extra hiring and if we have the ability to do that, and federal funds coming in. What has been missing, or what is still missing, I think, from the finance information that I would like to see, and I said this week at Business and Finance, is I would like to see the top tier where we illustrate the reduction in revenue that we are not getting, which tells us exactly how much we now need to cut, because we did have some found money during the past. Found money. We ended up with more money in some areas in our FY20 budget than we anticipated, and some other things that we carried over more than we thought we would. And I would like to see that final top tier to reflect that before we start. I know we've cut positions, but before we get to that, I'd like to see that bottom line number. Before we start factoring in all the extra COVID-related PPE and all of those expenses, and before we factor in, so we can know for sure as a committee how much we had to cut and why, so it reflects our actual revenues lost, and then looking at our spending after that. Because I think that's not clear, because it seems like we should have more funds than we do, and flexibility to meet some of those flexible needs. We don't have extra money, but I think we need a very clear picture of what that looks like, and we have not seen that. So I appreciate that.
Thank you, Member Gustafson. Member Longbelial, please.
Yes, very quickly. Thank you for sending out the revised schedules for elementary and ECC. And I wondered if you could explain a little bit about how the time in the afternoon works. And then I think you had also sent out a somewhat revised schedule for the high school, where you talked about and with the idea that there would be more structure in the afternoons. So I wondered if you could talk about how those revisions work for the different levels of school, the additional structure in the afternoons.
Sure. So Bob and I have spent an awful lot of time talking about this. Bob, do you want to go through if you want to hit elementary, middle, and high?
Yeah, I'll be happy to speak to any of that. How about you share them on the screen so people can see what's going on? And
yes, I just have to find them.
Yeah, I don't have those.
Okay.
Linda, your question, you wanted to know specifically about the focus of the afternoons? Is that
Yeah, exactly. Yes, exactly. And what's going to happen in the afternoon?
Sure, I can speak in generalities, and maybe we don't even have to get these up on the screen.
Yeah.
What we shared originally was that the afternoons were going to be focused on small group as well as individual teaching and learning. And after receiving feedback from all of you a couple weeks ago, maybe even a month ago, I've worked with the principals to refine the way the afternoon looks. And so what we're doing is we're still allowing time during the afternoon to be able to look at maybe special ed pullout services, individual student needs, small group needs, but we've also added in a focus to the afternoon. So for instance, let's say I had ELA and math in the morning. What we've done is in the afternoon, we've scheduled time specifically for students to now meet a second time with their ELA or math teacher to receive some reteaching, some feedback on homework, to have a formal check-in to see how things are going. So that's what we've done that's different, and that was based on the feedback of the committee as a whole. And that's true for preschool, it's true for our K-5 schools, and it's true for our middle and high schools as well. And that's reflected in all those schedules that were shared.
Okay, so is that going to be mandatory for them to participate in that, or
Yeah,
optional?
I think there were actually some words that I listed underneath the high school plan where it talked about those are mandatory times. So that will be, and that will be communicated out by each school as well. It's time where it's not optional. Students are being required to check in, and that's what's different. So we've reacted to the feedback that you guys gave us to try to move in that direction.
Thank you. That's a very positive step. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Member Longobilio, and thank you, Deputy Burlow. We're going to go to Catherine, and then we're going to go to recommendations.
I just have one quick question. What is like the metric to know if the remote model is working and that students are learning? I know we've talked a lot about how we're gonna make like this like fall better than the spring, but how are we measuring that like it's actually working? Like any student can take a test and pass it, but it doesn't mean they're learning, I guess is my question.
So I think that's probably one of the best questions that is out there. It's probably one of the most asked questions that's out there. It's not just for our district, it's for, all districts. It's the same thing goes with hybrid, Catherine. How are we going to know? So a big part of what we're going to be doing is, doing assessments that go along with the power standards and, looking at how, what kids are learning and, ultimately how they're doing. This is going to be different. Again, remote versus in person versus just fully in person. They're just completely different ways of learning. So again, we're just making sure that we want to look at what we can do around all kids, around attempting to meet their needs as best we can, so that they're able to succeed through this initial part, and then getting into hybrid, and then if we have to go back to remote, or if they decide to stay remote, we still have the capacity to support them there. But a lot of it will be done through our assessments.
Okay, so are you planning to poll like students like Google Forms or parents or families? Or are you just like, what do you mean assessments? Like by like the test the teachers administer?
Yeah, so
and, like,
yep, so there's that, but there will always be some survey information that goes out there, specifically from buildings, as we move forward, where that way we can actually, work around, okay, here's what's working. One of the things we found out was there were some issues with synchronous versus asynchronous last year. So we heard an awful lot about there weren't enough time for synchronous learning, and students and parents were really looking for that from us and from staff. So we rolled that in. So we'll be doing the same type of thing. So what is working? What isn't working? What can we do? We can't make everyone happy in this situation, because it's not perfect. But we're going to do our best to try to meet everyone's needs.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, everybody. So now moving on, we're going to recommendations requiring action by the school committee. I'm going to read a motion to accept the settlement between AA Transportation for home to school transportation, special ed in district and special education out of district, and the Wachusett Regional School District, whereby invoices for the closure, somebody isn't muted if you don't mind, guys. Whereby invoices for the closure of 62 days are prorated with, oh, Linda, I think it's you.
Oh, sorry. I think you hear my kid in the background.
That's okay. I just get distracted with all these words.
Sorry.
whereby invoices for the total closure of 62 days are prorated with a payment to the vendor of 75 of total invoice, with the district realizing a savings of 25%. Is there a motion on the floor?
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Would the administration like to have a discussion of this?
Sure. I know Director Deede's been, working on this project for a long time, so I'll give him the floor to speak. Dan?
All right. Thank you, Darryl. First of all, I want to thank the Business and Finance Subcommittee for their due diligence on this as well over the past several months. Back in August, Ron Ernenwein, who's the president of AA Transportation, sent another proposal in terms of hopefully responding to some of the questions from Business and Finance. At the end of the day, in the superintendent's report, we've identified some potential issues that may be the end result if this is not passed. But I think I'd like to go back to a couple of years ago, and this predates me being here in the district. But as Superintendent McCall stated several years ago, when Atlantic Express bellied up, the district reached out to both AA Transportation and to Vanpool. And they made them aware of the issues, and both vendors, particularly AA Transportation, was able to provide transportation for the district students seamlessly. I believe Atlantic Express bellied up just prior to the Christmas break, and when the students returned in early January, the buses were rolling again without interruption. I think that after all the analysis is done, and there's been a great deal of analysis done here, I think that this comes down to relationships. And as AA and Vanpool were there for us several years ago, again, we're looking to ensure their continued viability so that they can be there for us as we move forward.
Thank you very much. Do members have questions? Oh, Member Dennis, thank you.
Hi, thank you. So just to provide some context, as Director Deede has mentioned, and I think Darryl has mentioned, this topic has been a topic on the agenda for Business and Finance probably since May. We've had numerous hours of discussion on it. I do think that we've done due diligence. And at our most recent meeting this past Monday, the committee voted 4-1 not to recommend that the full school committee adopt this settlement. So I want to give some context, a little bit of history as to why I think that's the case, and perhaps what the pathway forward might be. So back in early May, there was guidance from the DESE. I think there was original guidance even before that, as we were in a school closure going from month to month to advise districts to continue to pay their contractors and employees. And once the decision was made that we were not going to be reopening for the spring, there was a meeting with DESE Associate Commissioner Jay Sullivan back in early May. That school districts may, emphasis on the word may, make a readiness payment to school transportation providers based on any type of negotiated settlement, in anticipation of making that transportation vendor ready for next year. In one of our meetings, and we've had discussions around the proposal of 75-25% numerous times. That much hasn't changed. We had a district council at Business and Finance in June 17th, where district council affirmed that we were under no legal obligation to pay for services that were not used. So, it's important to understand the dollar values that are associated here. My understanding is that there's about $1.4 million that is encumbered. 75% of that is just a little over $1 million. that would be $1 million payment for services that we were not able, simply did not use for reasons that were not related to anything that anyone is responsible for. Certainly, AA has come back and said, well, we'll give you a rate freeze, which is equal to about $160,000 for this year. Of course, we're not fully using our transportation this year, so we don't know how that's going to be impacted. They further have said that we calculate that the PPP forgiveness, if we get it, would be $95,000, and we would give you that credit. However, Director Dede did caution us that their employees would have needed to be made whole. And in fact, we were informed that the employees were put on unemployment back when schools began to close in March. The thing that's changed about this settlement agreement really is time. And we knew that there would be time periods where our decisions and our ability to maneuver would be limited. And that has in fact been the case. So as we closed the fiscal year, we were no longer able to move funds into a transportation, or at least the fulfillment of these funds into a transportation stabilization fund, which allow us to roll them over and take advantage of them readily for next year. As of our meeting this past Monday, it was unclear. So it was unclear whether or not the funds, if we were to enter into a settlement at this point, whether or not those funds could be counted in our transportation reimbursement schedule to be reimbursed. We've been informed by Director Dede that he approximates a reduction in transportation reimbursement of about $400,000 because obviously we didn't use all of the transportation for last year, and we also didn't make a readiness payment, which we could have otherwise counted. So as time has gone on, the dollar impact for this deal has just gotten worse and worse, and we have not seen, and I appreciate the words around a couple of years ago about us bailing them out, but we've seen no movement or very little movement off of the 75-25 position that they have taken with us to try to get to someplace in the middle. And so, one of our members had mentioned that I do think it's an interesting potential path forward is that perhaps these discussions be taken in the context of not only what did we have for last year, but broaden it to include what is it that we need to have for this coming year, and develop a settlement that's based on our new needs for this year, as well as what's taken place for last year. But again, as it stands right now, our committee, after hearing all of these different pieces of information, voted to not support its adoption at the full school committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Dennis. That was a very comprehensive report. We do have some hands from members. So Member Gustafson and Member Young.
I was going to add a couple more points of context from the previous discussions that may not be evident in the proposal people currently see, because I am on business and finance as well, and we have had extensive discussions about this since March or April, many. One of the things that you cannot see is that in the interim between various proposals, the 25-75 is where we landed. There was at one point a discussion of going to 50%. We changed it. I'm not going to get into all that, but he didn't accept that, so he left it at 75. But the piece that was the most troublesome and the most we went back and forth about all summer was the amount we'd be forgiven and what would happen if his loan was forgiven. He was very reluctant to give us information about that. When he did, we had made a proposal back after we talked in June, after we talked with, had our last meeting actually about this issue. And in that proposal, we had proposed something like 25% be forgiven back to us. We looked at how much of their services we contributed to and things like that. And he countered with $25,000 instead of 25%. We obviously weren't very amenable to that. And so now we've gotten to this higher amount, which I appreciate. But I guess my point is that if we had started with this proposal in June, we perhaps might have had been more amenable to it, at least from my perspective. I can only speak for me, but it solves part of our problems. But he really was very reluctant to give us a lot of information about why he needed these funds and what they would be used to cover. And if you look at the letter that he wrote, I don't know if you could see the whole information we have in the packet from Business and Finance. One of the main issues with their funding and why they are asking for more funds is because they did not have any summer revenues. The Wachusett District is not usually a huge source of their summer revenues, from my understanding. So he's explaining why their business needs to remain solvent and needs these funds to make up for lost revenues, of which our district really has nothing to do with. And so some of us, at least I, and I think some of us, had some concerns with that. So I just think some of that history is perhaps useful, and I appreciate what he's done. I think that what is in this proposal with the loan forgiveness is much better than where we started, and I'd actually be probably fine with that. But I don't think they fully justified the 75-25% request. And I also think that the history of him drawing this out all summer, we had to go back to them about 4 or 5 times, asking for the detail we finally just got, and trying to get a justification out of him. If we gotten this in June, I think we might have been able to figure this out. So that's my context that I think is maybe relevant to all of you. It's not just that we didn't want to bring this to your attention or support it. We didn't have enough information.
Thank you, Member Gustafson. We're going to grab a couple questions. I just want to let you guys know we have other motions as well. Member Young, what is your question?
Thanks. I just have a question through the chair to Member Dennis as the chair of Business and Finance. In what we were given, we can't see attachments L, M, N, and O relating to the transportation settlement. Were the documents there that justified the 75% number, or was it just documentations and things didn't add up close? I mean, was 75% just picked, or is there actual justification behind some of these numbers?
Sure. Through the chair, I'm happy to respond. Without being able to see the attachments that you're referring to, I'll answer the gist of your question. So the information that was provided to Business and Finance was a calculation from their payroll company as to how much money would be eligible to be reimbursed to Wachusett for PPE. The question of 75-25% has never really been articulated to us from a principle-based negotiation standpoint, or from any principle for that matter. What we've come to understand is that 75-25 is what was negotiated. Director Dede mentioned earlier that he and a colleague were charged with negotiating on behalf of several member towns and coming up with a model settlement agreement for those towns. And so the 75-25, I believe, came from that. But we've been asking from day one, what are the fixed costs? What are the principles that mean something to us, why we should be at 75-25, and we never did get that level of detail.
Thank you, Member Young. I think I also have a question from Member Longbelia, please.
Yes, I have a question for Mr. Dede, which is, how do you see this, any decision not to approve this agreement affecting our relationship with AA Transportation going forward and impacting operations?
So through the chair, I can't speak for Mr. Ernenwine. I mean, he's well aware of this discussion this evening. He's made me aware that the handful of other districts that hadn't paid, that there's a lawsuit out there. However, he has said to me he didn't jump into that lawsuit. He chose not to. He's not quite sure what his next step would be, if there is anything. He's committed to working with us this year. He's committed to providing services across the board. as Dr. McCall has stated earlier, we had meetings the past couple of weeks. We've got a meeting this week to sort out, the transportation once the buses begin to roll. Meetings to sort out special education and transportation. Ron is a professional, and he's going to keep these two items separate. And as we go forward, he'll be a partner in working out our transportation challenges as they relate to the start of school. And again, in Dr. McCall's report, there are suggestions given as to what the consequences may be, but I think as I look at those again, I think it comes back to a partnership, to a relationship. To Mike's point, if I may, just for another minute or two, the 75-25 is the end result of lengthy conversations that my colleague from the Shrewsbury Public Schools and I had back in April and early May. We drilled down as far as we could and to get that figure less than 75%, and at the end of the day, it wasn't possible. I do want to point out, though, that as part of the process, as part of this negotiations, that again, Mr. Ernenwein is willing to freeze this year's rates, saving approximately $116,000 and change. He's willing to freeze SPED in district rates, and again, that's savings approximately $43,000. And yes, if keyword is if his PPP loan is forgiven, keyword is if, there's potential another $95,000 and change. Again, that's potential. Again, I guess time will tell how he reacts.
Okay. I didn't quite understand what you meant when you said that he didn't jump into those lawsuits. Did he sue the districts that didn't pay anything?
Nope. There are a handful of other districts that, for whatever reason, chose not to pay either, and they are very few and far between. There is a law firm in Boston that has taken on the case for a transportation provider, and when he was approached to be a part of that, he declined.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Member Longoria. I believe next we have Member Haynes.
Thank you. So when I was looking at this, I realized busing is just one of the services that was cut short or cut out completely with the closure in the spring. And I was trying to think about our other various service providers, other contracts in play. And I do remember there was a question about the coaches for the spring sports, and I believe that they were given a reduced rate for payment, and I guess there were probably a few other exceptions like that. But I'm trying to think, was there any other vendor, any other service provider, any out-of-district tuition, anybody else besides this one single company that we did not pay? That we did not pay. Is the busing company? Are they the only ones that we are not looking to not pay at all anything out of everybody from what happened in the spring?
Through the chair, yes.
Thank you, Member Haynes. We're going to move down the list now to Member Woodland.
I just have a question for the Business and Finance Committee. Did your committee see or discuss the bullets that were in tonight's superintendent's report about this issue?
So Megan, I can respond to that through the chair. While they were not articulated in the bulleted form that they're listed in tonight, they have been brought up and we have discussed them. And in fact, that's part of the reason why I provided some of the context regarding the opinion that we received from District Council back in June with respect to our requirement to pay. It also addresses, in my comments, the notion that there are transportation reimbursement. I think it's also mentioned in there circuit breaker to a much lesser extent, Medicaid to a much lesser extent, reimbursement. And again, as of the time of our meeting, the administration did not know whether or not now the time has passed, whether even if we did have a settlement today, those reimbursement figures could be updated to reflect the readiness payment.
Thank you, Member Dennis. So we're going to go to we have Hamer, Brown, back to Dennis and Lavoy. And Member, could you mute, please? Linda, could you mute when you have a chance?
Yep, working on it.
So when I read all this information, it's not that I don't think that we should pay them anything. I certainly think that we should cover their expenses. I really don't think that we need to make them whole. I don't think any company, any school, anyone in the state has been made whole. I mean, we're at a point where we're losing teachers and we're going to pay a bus company so that they end up with revenue. It just doesn't seem right to me. In the bullet points in the report we received, it says, you know, for the CARES Act funding, we're expected to make a considerable effort. And it doesn't say that you have to pay them their full revenue. Again, if we can get a list of their verified expenses, I have no problem with that at all. But it seems to me that with the amount that we're paying them plus the PPP loan, that they will then be making a profit. And I have a big problem with that when we let go teachers.
Thank you, Member Haber. Member Brown, please.
So 7 years ago, I was on the committee. I was on the Legal Affairs Subcommittee, and I really know how AA came to bat for us. We were looking at a disaster when the New York bus company went bankrupt. And so we scrambled. AA did come through. I know he had to go and buy all new buses for us back 7 years ago. And I know since then he has been purchasing new buses. And so just keep that in mind. And also, I am a business owner. I did receive a PPP loan. The PPP loan only covers 8 weeks of payroll and rent or lease. And so you can apply for forgiveness. It's not a guarantee, but if he still has bank loans on all those buses that he's purchasing, he still has bills to pay. And so you know, he should come and give us that information. What kind of bills does he have? But just, you know, the PPP only covers a certain period of time. It's 8 weeks. And again, there's no guarantee on him getting that back.
Thank you, Member Brown. I have Member Dennis, Member Lavoy, and then Member Ayala, please.
Thank you. So just a quick response to Member Haynes' comment that, you know, perhaps this is the only vendor that we're choosing not to pay. I don't think anyone has had the perspective that we're choosing not to pay in this case. In this case, you know, we're trying to come up with a quote unquote settlement agreement for services that we did not use. And AA has held a pretty firm line on the 75-25% split, which I believe our committee has felt is just too high. And when we try to understand the principles along, you know, trying to cover fixed costs, for example, we were really not met with information that would support that level of payment. So, you know, again, at some point in time, you know, time has gone on, and you know, if you're unwilling to try to meet someplace in the middle that's in a principle-based negotiation, then perhaps the default answer becomes zero over time. And in fact, we're losing money by or losing the opportunity to even have reimbursement by having this go on. But to me, that doesn't justify just agreeing to the amount that we don't think is an appropriate amount to pay.
Thank you so much. I believe next is Member Lavoy, please.
I appreciate the clarification by Member Dennis. I actually wanted to just state that I'm not looking at this as a vote of $0 versus 75%. What I do look at is I have a lot of respect for our subcommittees, the work that they do, and if the subcommittee in Business and Finance doesn't feel as if a 75% amount is justified, I respect that. I can honor that, and I can certainly go to sleep comfortably at night knowing that it's a reasonable request to have a reasonable amount to be able to agree to at this committee.
Thank you so much, Member Lavoy. I have Member Ayala, please. Our list is growing a little bit. So we have Ayala, Ember, Otmar, Amos.
Just a question. When will we know when the PPP will be forgiven? Or do we know?
Through the chair, I don't have that information. I can certainly find out. I don't know if he's applied for forgiveness yet or not.
Okay, and then I know we're trying for the 75%, but how was he the owner of AA Transportation, AAA, sorry, AA Transportation when if lower amounts were asked? Was he just not willing to budge below the 75%?
Through the chair, there were other figures presented to Mr. Ernenwine, and they were not acceptable.
Okay, thank you. Next member, Ember, please.
So I have a hard time supporting this motion. One, as Matt pointed out, and I agree, we have Business and Finance who are recommending against this, and I know that they've been working on this for a very long time and in a detailed way. And I think there needs to be a true basis for what those costs are. And I do appreciate what AA has done when we were in a crunch time, but that doesn't mean that they don't have a responsibility to sort of lay out their numbers and say, here's where we're going to get hurt, this is why, and here's our application. And the fact that he hasn't even applied for that money yet is disturbing. So, and I know that he had some resistance to even applying in the first place because it was a bother, and I'm disturbed by that as well. Just the entire attitude. So I also feel we have a responsibility to help them out at some point, but it has to be based on something and not arbitrary percentages. And so I can't support this. Thanks.
Thank you, Member. Member Otmar and then Member Amos.
Yes, and I just wanted to add something that Member Dennis had alluded to this briefly. And one of the things that had come up in our Business and Finance meeting was the possibility about, rather than treating this as a settlement for one fiscal year, knowing that full well we're going to need another settlement for this fiscal year because 2 days time frame is, we've got our first day and we're not going to have buses running. And so the 75-25, at least my thought was that for maybe that's a reasonable number for last year with conditions on rate freeze this year. Plus, once we start doing hybrid, we know that we're going to need more buses based on our limitations on people, and there's going to be a lot of cleaning involved. And so it seems as though maybe it is could be the right number for last year, but there's unknowns with this year as well, and it's really the same conditions. It's this COVID environment that we're in, and my thought was that we might be able to work something out with one settlement that really covers these changing conditions different years. And so I think that was kind of part of what was kind of part of the reasons why I think it's just, as it stands right now, there's still a lot of questions that are out there, especially 2 days time frame. We've got a new year on, and we still kind of have a unsolved puzzle to work at. So just wanted to add some of that context.
Thank you, Member Otmar. Member Amos, please.
Hi, newbie question here. So if we vote no, that we do not support this 75-25 based on the information provided, what happens then? Do the conversations continues? What happens?
Your answer?
So through the chair, I'll need to have a conversation with the superintendent tomorrow morning to see if we just pursue, if we just end this discussion and move on, or do we drill down deeper? I will give a recommendation to the superintendent tomorrow morning. Happy to share that with the chair of Business and Finance as well.
Thank you. Member Brown, please.
I do respect all the subcommittee's work, and that's, since I've been on this committee, I don't believe I've ever voted against a recommendation by a subcommittee, so I'm not going to do it this evening because, again, in our subcommittees, this is pretty much how we run the school committee, pretty much all in subcommittee. So I just wanted to say that.
Thank you, Member Brown. Seeing no other hands, we will go to a roll call vote. Starting from the top, Member Amos.
Amos, no.
Member Ayala.
Ayala, no.
Member Bennett.
Bennett, no.
Member Brown.
Brown, no.
Member Dennis.
Dennis, no.
Member Gustafson.
Gustafson, no.
Member Haber.
Haber, no.
Member Haynes.
No.
Member Imber.
Kimber, no.
Member Kirschenbaum.
Kirschenbaum, no.
Member Lavoy.
Lavoy, no.
Member Longueville.
Longueville, no.
Member Mills.
Mills, no.
Member Mitchell is not here tonight. Member Otmar.
Otmar, no.
Member Silva.
Silva, no.
Member Smith.
Smith, no.
Member Williamson.
Williamson, no.
Member Woodland.
Woodland, no.
Member Young.
Young, no.
And the chair votes no. The motion fails. Next on our agenda tonight, to accept the settlement agreement between Vanpool Transportation for Special Education Out-of-District Transportation and the Wachusett Regional School District, whereby invoices for the total closure days of 62 days are prorated with a payment to the vendor of 75% total invoice, with the district realizing a savings of 25%.
Madam Chair, if I may, administration withdraws this motion.
Okay, at this time, the administration has withdrawn the motion on the floor. Next on our agenda tonight, to extend the contract with Melanson CPAs to continue to serve as the district's auditing firm for the 2020-2021 school year, and in doing so, exercise the first 2 option years of said contract. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any explanation before we go to discussion?
Madam Chair, this is, there was a procurement done several years ago. It was a 3-year procurement with 2 option years. We'd be looking to exercise the first of the 2 option years starting this fiscal year.
Thank you. Is there any discussion of the motion on the floor? Member Dennis?
Yes, I mean, is this, we haven't, certainly have not talked about it in Business and Finance, but has there been any discussion on this topic? How satisfied we are with regard to our auditor in the Audit Advisory Committee? Is there anybody who's here from that committee that can speak to that?
So through the chair, Member Mitchell is not here this evening. So he'd be the only person, I think, to speak to that.
Yeah, I'm on the committee, but I'm new, so I did good at the one meeting I was at.
And I guess I wonder, through the chair to the administration, is there any time sensitivity to this being done tonight, or can this be passed over to the next meeting?
Through the chair, I mean, they've begun work on the 20 audit. Short answer is no. Nope. The answer is no. We could postpone it.
No. Yep. Okay. Then I would move to postpone the motion to a time certain, which is the next full school committee meeting.
Second.
Member Dennis has made a motion to table this to a time certain, which is our next school committee meeting. It has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion on the floor? Seeing none, we'll go to a roll call vote. Member Amos?
Amos, yes.
Member Ayala?
Ayala, yes.
Member Bennett?
Bennett, yes.
Member Brown?
Brown, yes.
Member Dennis?
Dennis, yes.
Member Gustafson?
Gustafson, yes.
Member Haber?
Haber, yes.
Member Haynes?
Yes.
Member Imber?
Yes.
Member Kirschenbaum?
Kirschenbaum, yes.
Member Lavoy?
Lavoy, yes.
Member Longbeliel?
Longbeliel, yes.
Member Mills?
Mills, yes.
Member Mitchell? I'm sorry, Member Mitchell's not here. Member Otmar?
Otmar, yes.
Member Silva?
Silva, yes.
Member Smith?
Smith, yes.
Member Williamson?
Williamson, yes.
Member Woodland?
Woodland, yes.
And Member Young?
Young, yes.
And the chair votes yes, the motion passes. There's no unfinished business on today's agenda. Next is the secretary's report. First is the approval of the 1350 regular meeting minutes of the Wachusett Regional School District held on August 24, 2020 as enclosed. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion on the floor? Seeing none, a roll call vote. Member Amos?
Yes.
Member Ayala?
Ayala, yes.
Member Bennett?
Bennett, yes.
Member Brown?
Brown, yes.
Member Dennis?
Dennis, yes.
Member Gustafson?
Gustafson, yes.
Member Haber?
Haber, yes.
Member Haynes?
Yes.
Member Imber?
Member, yes.
Member Kirschenbaum?
Kirschenbaum, yes.
Member Lavoy?
Lavoy, yes.
Member Longbeliel?
Longbeliel, yes.
Member Mills?
Mills, yes.
Member Otmar?
Otmar, yes.
Member Silva?
Silva, yes.
Member Smith?
Smith, yes.
Member Williamson?
Williamson, yes.
Member Woodland?
Woodland, yes.
Member Young?
Young, yes.
And the chair votes yes. Next on our agenda tonight is the approval of the executive session minutes of the Wachusett Regional School District Committee held on August 24th, 2020. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Moved and seconded and seconded. Any discussion, guys?
Megan, the minutes were not shared.
Okay. So can we hold those to the next meeting, Madam Secretary?
Executive session minutes should not really be shared electronically, which is why they should be deferred until they can be released.
Okay. So we will defer that until they can be released. Oh, the sharing of the minutes, of course. We saw the motion on the floor, though. Is there a discussion regarding the release of these executive session minutes? So this motion is the release of the executive session minutes.
Megan, the minutes have not been shared at all. Nobody has seen the minutes yet.
Okay. Member Dennis?
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking for something procedural, I don't know if it would be in order to make a motion to withdraw the motion.
Yeah.
But if it were, I would do it.
Would you like to make a motion to withdraw the motion?
Sure.
Thank you. So there's a motion to withdraw the motion on the floor.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. I believe we still need to vote on the motion to withdraw the motion on the floor. So we will. Member Amos?
Yes.
Member Ayala?
Ayala, yes.
Member Bennett?
Yes.
Member Brown?
Brown, yes.
Member Dennis?
Dennis, yes.
Member Gustafson.
Gustafson, yes.
Member Haber.
Haber, yes.
Member Haynes.
Yes.
Member Inger.
Yes.
Member Kirschenbaum.
Kirschenbaum, yes.
Member Lavoy.
Abstain.
Member Longbeliel.
Longbeliel, yes.
Member Mills.
Abstain.
Member Otmar.
Otmar abstain.
Member Silva.
Silva, yes.
Member Smith.
Smith, yes.
Member Williamson.
Williamson, yes.
Member Woodland.
Woodland, yes.
Member Young.
Young, yes.
And the chair abstains. Next on our agenda is the approval of the 324 special meeting minutes of the Wachusett Regional School District held on August 31st, 2020 as enclosed. Do we have a motion here? For the special
So
meeting.
moved.
All right. Thank
Second.
you. Moved and seconded. Any discussion on the special meeting minutes? Seeing none. Member Amos.
Yes.
Member Ayala.
Ayala, yes.
Member Bennett.
Bennett, yes.
Member Brown.
Brown, yes.
Member Dennis.
Dennis, yes.
Member Gustafson.
Gustafson, yes.
Member Haber.
Haber, yes.
Member Haynes.
Yes.
Member Imber.
Yes.
Member Kirschenbaum.
Kirschenbaum, yes.
Member Lavoy.
Lavoy, yes.
Member Longbeliel.
Abstain.
Member Mills.
Mills, yes.
Member Otmar.
Otmar, yes.
Member Silva.
Megan, do you mind just repeating what the motion was? I stepped away for a second.
Yep, so this is the special meeting minutes.
Oh, the one on 31st?
Correct.
Abstain.
Member Smith.
Smith, yes.
Member Williamson.
Williamson abstains.
Member Woodland.
Woodland, yes.
Member Young.
Young, yes.
And the chair votes yes. Next on our agenda tonight is the treasurer's report and financial statements. Please direct those questions to Director Dede. Next on our agenda tonight are committee reports. Starting with management, we actually do meet next week, the 21st of September, and then we will have a report out to you after our meeting. Ed Sub, Chair Smith.
Sorry, having trouble with that button again. So let me get my notes here for Education Subcommittee. We did meet this evening prior to this meeting, and we continued our work looking at policies that MASC suggested we look at in relation to the COVID-19 challenges. And our next meeting will be on Tuesday, September 29th, before the full committee meeting. So we do have a policy for that sorry, let me start over. I'd like to make a motion to approve the second reading of amended policy 3813, policy relating to education, audio, video, and/or stenographic recordings of parent-teacher conferences and team meetings, waiving the reading.
Do I have a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there further discussion on this policy? Okay. Seeing none, we'll go to a roll call vote. Member Amos?
Amos, yes.
Member Ayala?
Ayala, yes.
Member Bennett?
Bennett, yes.
Member Brown?
Brown, yes.
Member Dennis?
Dennis, yes.
Member Gustafson?
Gustafson, yes.
Member Haber?
Haber, yes.
Member Haynes?
Yes.
Member Kirschenbaum? Member Imber first. Imber, then Kirschenbaum.
Member, yes.
Kirschenbaum, yes.
Member Lavoy?
Lavoy, yes.
Member Longbeliel?
Longbeliel, yes.
Member Mills?
Mills, yes.
Member Otmar?
Otmar, yes.
Member Silva?
Silva, yes.
Member Smith?
Smith, yes.
Member Williamson?
Williamson, yes.
Member Woodland?
Woodland, yes.
Member Young?
Young, yes.
And the chair votes yes. Next on our agenda is business and finance. Chair Dennis.
Thank you. So very briefly, in addition to, we did meet this past Monday, in addition to transportation reimbursement and the impact of enrollment trends, we discussed the fiscal year 20 closeout, which is being closed out very, very thin, but it has been alluded to. We did have greater than expected revolving fund rollovers, so that helps us for this year. We also spent a considerable time talking about fiscal year 21. One of the things I thought was interesting is that we learned that the administration is currently acting on budgeted fiscal year 20 levels. We have asked for our next meeting to provide us with a buildup from fiscal year 21, both the anticipated reduction of revenues as well as the increase in expenses, and any grants that have been applied that we expect to receive against those expenses, so that we can understand better how we should be operating for fiscal year 21.
Any questions for business finance? Seeing none, legal affairs, Chair Brown.
We have not met. I will be scheduling a meeting probably coming up in the next 2 weeks. As you all know, we've been negotiating with the WRA with the MOA for remote, and I'm going to be going over that in executive session later on. That's it.
Any questions for legal? Okay. Moving on to superintendent goals and evaluations, Chair Mills.
Yes, we'll be meeting next week for the first time in front of the management meeting.
Thank you, Chair Mills. Facilities and security, Chair Young.
Thank you. We have met twice since the last meeting. The first meeting was on September 1st, and the second meeting was at 6 o'clock this evening. Both meetings had a lot of talk about the HVAC review and repair. And we went through that, in detail, both at September 1st, and then, we got the updates today that everybody saw in the packet. Beyond that, some of the other topics of discussion have been safety and security for both remote learning and regarding student health records, since we may be handling a little bit more health information this year. One of the other topics was basically use of the fields regarding the high school fields. It was something brought up by the Select Board of Holden, and Dr. McCall is supposed to be talking with him soon. And then we're looking at further prioritization of subcommittee policies for this subcommittee to take on. And then I have a motion. So it's a motion to approve the second reading of draft policy 6612.3, policy relating to pupil services for face covering, while waiving the reading.
Thank you so much. There's a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further questions regarding this policy? Seeing none, we'll go to a roll call vote. Oh, Member Gustafson.
Sorry, I have one. Well, yes, one. I assume it's been discussed with the boards of health, because I've read about other subcommittees having policies based on the template and then having the boards of health amend them. So I wanted to make sure that's been discussed. And my second question is also that I've seen some having one of those amendments having to do with specifying what type of face covering is acceptable. And that may just vary according to boards of health, but I wanted to make sure we've covered that with ours.
That's a good question. As far as I know, it has not been reviewed by the boards of health.
Okay.
A little bit of time, if that's something we want to do, we could, or we could vote on it tonight and do that after.
Yeah, I have no problem with that. Again, I know you put a lot of work into it. I just had seen that from some other districts, so it was a question.
It is a good question. I guess I have a question of procedure. If we don't do the second reading tonight, and we amend it and move forward with the second reading, as opposed to it and amending it later and doing two more readings. Does anybody know how that works?
So you could pass the motion tonight, all right? And then if there were amendments to be made by boards of health, we would come back and make those amendments later.
Yeah.
If we were to rescind the motion and not put this policy forward today, we would have to wait until the next meeting, your next subcommittee meeting, where you would make amendments and then you would do 2 more readings again.
I didn't want to hold it up based on that. I was just asking the question because school does start in, a few days. So.
Right.
Dr. McCall, have you heard from any boards of health that this policy may be an issue? No.
No, I haven't specifically spoken with the boards of health about this policy. And again, I can't speak for them, but when I'm thinking about their take on it, they're really interested in ensuring that masks are being worn and all protocols are in play. For instance, today we spent a lot of time talking about the emergency COVID teams that come in if we have a cluster of cases, 2 or 3 cases in the classroom, those types of things. But other than that, I think they're pretty supportive of everything we've been putting out there so far.
And I know they are highly variable across the state, so it may just be a local issue. So I'm fine with that. I just wanted to ask. Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to keep the motion on the floor then. And Megan, you're on mute.
This bar tonight is killing me. All right. Member Silva.
I know you're following the DESE guidelines when you wrote this up, but how exactly is this generalization, this statement kind of concerns me, during physical education classes? Because does that mean that they're still following the distancing, or I'm a little confused on that one.
So when we wrote it, we were very careful about how this was worded, and it was a long topic of discussion. It's basically each bullet point is separate and dependent upon that sentence before that. Face masks or face coverings will not be required when DESE guidelines for social distancing for the scenario are enforced during physical education. So they still need to meet all the social distancing and all of that as outlined by DESE. It's not just, it's a gym class, we can take our masks off. It's, every DESE guideline has to be followed.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
Yep, no problem.
Thank you. Member Imber had a question.
Well, really a comment, and that is I'm happy to support the motion as long as the subcommittee will go back and sort of get advice of the boards of health, and if there's anything substantive, then we can certainly modify just so that we have a policy in place, initially, which I think would be a good thing. So, thanks.
Thank you.
I'll withdraw. That was my comment.
Okay, thank you. With no other questions regarding the policy on the floor, we will go to a roll call vote. Member Amos?
Amos, yes.
Member Ayala?
Ayala, yes.
Member Bennett?
Bennett, yes.
Member Brown?
Brown, yes.
Member Dennis?
Dennis, yes.
Member Gustafson?
Gustafson, yes.
Member Haber?
Haber, yes.
Member Haynes?
Yes.
Member Imber?
Yes.
Member Kirschenbaum?
Yes.
Member Lavoy?
Lavoy, yes.
Member Longbeliel?
Longbeliel, yes.
Member Mills?
Mills, yes.
Member Otmar?
Otmar, yes.
Member Shapiro? Oh, she's not with us. Member Silva?
Silva, yes.
Member Smith?
Smith, yes.
Member Williamson?
Williamson, yes.
Member Woodland?
Woodland, yes.
Member Young?
Young, yes.
And the chair votes yes. Thank you, Adam and facilities, for your work. I'm sure it's a much busier subcommittee than usual this year. Moving on to diversity, equity, and anti-racism, Chair Silva.
Before I start, Megan, can I ask like a process question? I wasn't able to attend the last meeting, but I wanted to speak also on Principal Lane's a couple of things that I think actually contribute and enhance what in terms of this subcommittee, in terms of their goals, and it gives an example. I'd like to be able to do that, but I wasn't sure in terms of process if I'm allowed to do that.
Process-wise, that would not technically be in order, but if you'd like to speak about what your subcommittee has spoken on, and if that has something that has come into your discussions, that would be appropriate.
It hasn't, so okay, I can do it at the end when it's allowed in terms of process.
Okay.
In terms of the update on our subcommittee meeting, we have decided that we need to meet twice a month. We actually read out some of the student statements similar to what you read out today, and there was a lot of comments on topics such as racism, colorism, religion, sex orientation, and ethnicity. The request from students we found was that they required a safe space for advocacy. They wanted a designated staff member. A lot of the comments talked about how there was only one African-American teacher that was in the high school, and they didn't feel that they had any other adult to go and, you know, confide in or get advice from for things that they might need to actually vent to, depending upon what they're going through. So kind of like a safe space for advocacy and a designated staff member for them to do so. Some of the questions and discussions we discussed on was coming up with the administration to come up with actually disciplinary action, like disciplinary guidelines of exactly what types of actions are going to entail certain consequences. Because from the comments of the students, it was very clear that certain actions to particular students were taken more drastically, and for others taken, you know, less drastically, and maybe even, you know, overlooked. So we were asking administration to actually maybe help us come up with guidelines that would identify that certain types of behavior require certain types of consequences. Similarly, also for teacher guidelines, for example, similar to one of the comments that you read this evening, was one student said that they heard some sort of discriminatory comment made to another student in front of teachers, and the teachers did not take any action. So giving the, you know, benefit of the doubt, we would like to actually outline what types of actions should teachers take action on, and what can they do about it. So it's clear what is considered unacceptable and what is considered, okay, this is minor, this is something we can handle within the classroom, or it needs to be taken more to the administration. So that is overall what we kind of discussed. And we're going to be meeting every 2 weeks.
Any questions? Yes. Member Otmar has a point of order.
So that we can ensure we get public comment in, motion to extend to 10:30.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion of the motion on the floor? Great. Roll call vote. Member Amos.
Yes.
Member Ayala.
Ayala, yes.
Member Bennett.
Bennett, yes.
Member Brown.
Yes.
Member Dennis.
Dennis, yes.
Member Gustafson.
Gustafson, yes.
Member Haber.
Haber, yes.
Member Haynes.
Yes.
Member Imber.
Embry, yes.
Member Kirschenbaum.
No.
Member Lavoy.
Lavoy, no.
Member Long-Balil.
Long-Balil, yes.
Member Mills.
Mills, yes.
Member Mitchell. Sorry, Mitchell's not here. Member Otmar.
Otmar, yes.
Member Silva.
Silva, yes.
Member Smith.
Smith, yes.
Member Williamson.
Williamson, yes.
Member Woodland.
Woodland, yes.
Member Young.
Young, yes.
And the chair votes yes. Are there any questions for diversity before we move on? Seeing none, Audit Advisory Board. Chair Mills is not here. Member Young, do you have anything for us?
I don't remember when we met. I thought it was before our last meeting, so I have no updates.
All right, thank you. There are no building committees at the moment. School council, I believe there's a CPAC report, but others have not met yet.
Yep, I have a brief one. They just sent me, they sent a summary. Last week, we did have another question and answer session with Christine Smith, which we appreciate her time for. I don't remember how many people have attended, but I know over 100 have seen the video, so it's been well received, and parents really appreciate those opportunities. So I thank her for that. The CPAC said they have held the second in a series of 90-minute Q&A meetings with more to come. There was strong participation from parents, educators, administration, and community, and were many clarifications and updates about communication to families, remote learning. Also, I think compensatory services was mentioned. And there will be follow-ups regarding strategies to further support students remotely as well. We have many families who have reported receiving engagement from their schools, and will continue to partner with the administration to work through the year. So that was their summary. The second update that I have is that they're having a meeting October 5th, which is not posted yet, but they have told me they've scheduled it, where they will formally elect their officers for this year. It was delayed from the spring, and they will have some other things on the agenda, but that is one of the first things they have to do by law. So if anyone is following CPAC or has students involved in special education in the district or an interest in what they do, they would appreciate attendance at that so that they can have a fully functioning board for this coming year and continue to do their work. So that's the update I have from them.
Thank you very much. We are on to our second public hearing. Actually, I only have one comment that has come in during our meeting, but I would like to read it. It comes from Emily Miller. Hello. As a parent of a second grader in the district, I'm writing to express my support for changing the name of Columbus Day. We should not be glorifying a murderer. Students in the district still learn that this man discovered America and see him as a hero. We need to stop teaching inaccurate history. Changing the name of this holiday is a move in the right direction. Thank you. New business. Is there any new business? Before I get your new business, I do also want to keep up what we've been doing. If you have requests for information, please send that to me within the next day or so, and I will get that to the administration. I feel like that's been very helpful in getting the superintendent's report, including things that we need answered. Any official new business to put on the agenda for next time? Member Lavoie?
I would like to, and I've requested this information, but I'd like to put on the agenda a formal discussion as we look past the October 1 date, the impact of what our student population is going to look at when it comes to the budget next year. I don't think it's prudent for us to wait for legislation to happen, so I'd like to have a meaningful discussion as to what things look like at that point in time.
All right, so the specific request for information is specific budget impacts if it were to go through today as of October 1st?
What I'd like to know is, we know right now there are roughly 300 additional kids.
I want to write it down correctly. I know what we know. What are you asking to have known? I just want to write down.
A discussion on that, on the budgetary impact of next year.
Okay. Would you like that to go through budget and finance first, or do you want that for school?
What I'm hoping to understand, Megan, is not just a number, but if the budget were, say, impacted by X millions of dollars, what that might mean to our staffing, our services, whatever. I want to start to have that discussion.
Okay. So the number, and then what that number means in real person and curriculum terms.
What that impact might be, sure.
Okay. I'll make sure I get that out tonight.
Thank you.
Any other new business? I know Member Silva wanted to make a statement. If you would like to put that on new business for next meeting's report, that would be in order. I wish I knew you had a statement before the beginning of this meeting.
Nope, that's fine.
Okay, so I'll put that on new business for the next meeting. All right. Any other new business? Okay, seeing none, we need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Member Chair?
Executive.
We need to adjourn to executive session. executive session to discuss strategies for contract negotiations. Discuss contract negotiations with the Washington Regional Education Association on 2020-2021 school opening. As the chair deems discussion in a public session would have an adverse effect on the district's bargaining position, not to return to public session.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
So move in a second on adjournment. So we need to go through a roll call vote, and then you guys have the second link for the executive session after we close this meeting. Member Amos?
Amos, yes.
Member Ayala?
Ayala, yes.
Member Bennett?
Bennett, yes.
Member Brown?
Brown, yes.
Member Dennis?
Dennis, yes.
Member Gustafson?
Gustafson, yes.
Member Haber?
Haber, yes.
Member,
Yes.
Member Imber?
Imber, yes.
Member Krishnamam?
Krishnamam, yes.
Member Lavoy?
Lavoy, yes.
Member Longbelial?
Longbelial, yes.
Member Mills?
Mills, yes.
Member Otmar?
Otmar, yes.
Member Silva?
Silva, yes.
Member Smith?
Smith, yes.
Member Williamson?
Williamson, yes.
Member Woodland?
Woodland, yes.
And Member Young?
Young, yes.
Chair votes yes. I'll see you guys on the other meeting.